The story begins with a bright, sunny day. The morning was beautiful and the sky is blue. The twisted notebook flew towards the guy making a coup and approaching his head. The girl asked him to wake up immediately, but the young man did not hear her. She stood with a notebook in her hand looking at this impudent student who allowed herself to sleep during the lesson. Suddenly, he woke up and his eyes lit up with a bright moonlight. He asked who dared to disturb the emperor. The boy, not yet waking up, extended his hand towards the girl and accidentally grabbed her by the chest. The guys in the class immediately turned their heads in their direction and opened their mouths. The girl's eyes flashed with rage and her face blushed with embarrassment. She took her breath and waved a notebook on the boy. She hit Jongfong's face with all her might and asked what he allows herself. The young man grabbed his hand by the cheek, seeing a teacher in front of him from a past life. He wondered what she was doing here, but the pain was quite real. But this cannot be just in the center of the battle. Now he ended up here. But how? Where did 4 emperors go and what his classmates do here? He could not figure out what happened. Maybe this is all the illusion of the past, Jongfong thinking began to rise from behind the desk. He called the teacher a miserable demon and asked how she was going to stop him. The boy began to use the reception of the immortal Lord of Heaven. What is the matter, and is it really all a dream? Classmates began to laugh and say that they did not think as if Jongfong so stupid. To paw the teachers with the whole class. He completely went crazy. Is he really so stupid or really thinks that he is a hero from a story about immortal cultivators? Jongfong unexpectedly remembered that he had lost and suddenly ended up at school. The teacher turned out to be behind him and angrily asked Li finished. The boy thought that for 500 years no one had raised his voice at him, and he had already forgotten how weak was then. The poor boy, whom everyone laughed at. Fortunately, the forces did not leave him. Otherwise, it would be more difficult to cope with the teacher. Jongfong decided to use an eye of a deity. The teacher had dark eyes and icy gaze. The boy realized that she was anger. He looked at her and inquired if she was sick. Miss Shi screamed, approaching him that he was sick and called him to the teachers. The boy followed her and said that it sounded somehow ambiguously. A cute guy went to a girl named Van Ziyun and asked her why she had this villain, who flirts even with the teacher. He spat on school, and she does not stop helping him. The girl replied that she had long thought to leave him. Van Jun called Jongfong and frowned and told him that he had disappointed her, and they would part. The boy did not worry much at that moment, and turning to her replied that it would be as she wants. Well, didn't he run after their beauty? The guys never saw Jongfong so decisive. She thought he would begin to beg for forgiveness. A cute guy began to scream and asked Jongfong if he was an idiot. Really his dog bit, because this girl respected him. The boy turned his head toward his classmate and asked Juba to stop making himself a hero. If he wants her, then let him say so, but he doesn't care. Juba fell out of his place and was ready to strangle the guy. He asked if he was tired of living. Classmates held him, asking him to calm down because they would deal with him after lessons. Jongfong thought that he had endured the mockery of these people. Let the past burn in hell, and from now on no one dares to humiliate him. When the boy went to the teachers, Miss Shi asked if he was in order at all and why he was going so slowly. Jongfong began to accelerate and was already near the girl. He exclaimed that he had already come. Miss Su sat down on a chair and sternly looking at the guy asked what it was. She asked to explain it to her right now. The teacher began to demand an explanation from him. Otherwise he knows what will happen. Jongfong stared at the teacher and thought that she had a figure like his maids from the kingdom of immortality. In a past life, she did not seem so beautiful to him. Miss Su continued to be indignant and asked him really nothing to say. In this case, she asked him to call his parents to school. Jongfong thought that they had been working for his life for him, and he only did that he failed them. He has a chance to fix everything, and is it possible to step on the same rake? You need to convince the teacher not to call them. He asked Miss Su to believe him because she had a chronic disease. Miss Su began to boil with anger, and her rage was just at the maximum level. She stood up in full height opposite the guy and asked him to immediately call his parents to school. Suddenly, something happened to the teacher and in her eyes clouded, and she staggered. The girl lost consciousness. Jongfong managed to catch her, taking her in his arms and sighing heavily. He said that he did not have enough strength for the highest spell. Only a blessing remains. He did not let the girl out of his hands and began to call the earth and air, light, emptiness, and world power. Handing a hand forward, she lit up with golden lightning. He asked these elements to give him strength. But when the boy agreed on the blue lightning began to wrap the teacher's body and he tried to arouse her, he was tired of a simple transmission of energy. It is worth starting to practice in order to recover, rather. Miss Su in his hands began to gradually open his eyes and named him by name. The main character explained to the teacher that she had just survived a heart attack. She asked what heart attack he talks about and how this could happen. Jongfong asked Miss Su whether it was hard for her to breathe and whether she feels a rapid heartbeat and dizziness. The teacher was very surprised and exclaimed, looking with big eyes at her student, that he may be right. The boy held a flower in his hands and said that if she did not call her parents, he would heal her. The girl took a flower from his hands and replied that she would not call them, only asks to cure her as soon as possible. Jongfong smiled back and said that they agreed, and he would need 3 days to prepare. Miss Su noticed that the guy was always so quiet and modest, and now she does not recognize him at all. He has become more decisive. Jongfong was already on the street with a backpack on his shoulders. The protagonist was called by his friend. Chan Jensa was the only best friend, and running up to him, he asked him to let him go. The boy turned to him and said that he had easily escaped and there were no problems, after which he laughed. Chan Zhensha said that the teacher could not so easily allow him to leave. Jongfong did not answer him a question, but he himself asked what he had with his face. A friend explained that he simply fell unsuccessfully and all this is nonsense. But the protagonist did not believe him and asked Li He Juba with his friends because of him. Chan Zhensa replied that they simply argued, and he had nothing to do with it. Jongfan did not like the bullying of his friend, but the guy hit him in a friendly manner on the shoulder and called it all nonsense because he was already used to it. The boy thought that Juba had very influential parents. His mother is the largest owner of real estate and father mayor of the city. Once someone stepped on his shoes and Juba broke his leg to that man, the status of his father allows him to mock everyone with impunity at whom he wants. Before he had time to think about it, he was hailing Juba with his friends called Jongfong and his dog with 2 insignificance and laughed at all. Chan Zhensa began to cry because he already had abrasions on his face and exclaimed that they would end and they would die. But the protagonist was not afraid of a drop and called a classmate to him who behaved obscenely and offended the rest. He pushed his friend away and asked Juba whether he was weak to fight with him alone. A classmate, hearing such a challenge and stood opposite the protagonist, he did not understand at first and asked if he seemed to him or he is forgotten. Does he really want to fight him? Jongfong raised 2 fingers up and offered to argue that he would easily overcome his friends with 2 fingers. The guys called him a storyteller and began to laugh loudly. Have they heard that Jiangfeng loves honest fights? They continued to laugh and say that it is not harmful to dream. So let him forget about their victory. One of the guys who was very high and healthy came up to him. He asked Maltz whether he would play with him. Jongfong was very confident in himself and raised his hand up. He was ready to repel the attack. The guy already squeezed his fist that brought him closer to his face. He asked if the guy was thinking that he would not hit him. If he thinks so, he is mistaken in this. The enemy really wanted to smear him with all his might and physiognomy, but it wasn't there, and friends Juba were very surprised at what they had just seen. Jongfong grabbed his opponent by his face with one hand, and bright golden rays enveloped him, after which he fell to his knees. The guys clenched their fists and asked the guy to stop immediately. They could not understand what happened to their friend Louis Shaguan. The guy answered his friends that he was definitely paralyzed and this man is very strong. The main character put 2 fingers to the enemy's forehead and asked him to get up and not disgrace. Louis Shaguano hugged Jiangfeng by his feet and asked, calling him a master, to take him as a student. In front of him is not ashamed to kneel. The boy asked him not to carry nonsense and began to push him away. He exclaimed that he did not need him and asked him to fall off. Then he got up from his knees and asked his comrades how they dared to climb his master. Juba, scared, began to step aside and threatened Louis Shagayan. He said that he would not dare to touch him, but the guy in response asked if he was thinking that he was afraid of him. He asked to look at his master. Turning to the main character, he asked if he said correctly. Chan Zhenza asked his friend whether he would accept him as a student. For his sake, he hit this impudent guy, Juba, and his family. This will simply not leave. The boy replied that his parents Juba and would not leave him alone with a look at the villain. Jongfeng asked his friend to go home and said that he would take care of everything. Chan Zhenji, in response, asked him not to linger until late since his uncle would worry. Juba, the wounded man, left the battlefield and threatened the main character that he would be responsible for everything. And Louis Shagayanu just a lid. The guy ran to Jongfan and said that he would go with him. He wants to become the same strong and he asked him his blow. But the boy pulled his hand away and replied that he did not have enough talent and skills, so he asked him not to follow him. Jongfong rushed with lightning speed and said goodbye to Louis Shagayan. Only the wind and puffs of smoke were visible under the feet of the protagonist. Before us is the house of Uncle Jongfong. The boy thought about the martial arts, and he was interested in whether there are still immortal among people. Standing in front of the house, he glanced at a high column thinking about it. He reached the door and heard the voice of his uncle, who asked him whether he returned. Before he could open the door as his sister met and said that they found out that he had done at school today, he could have thought about their reputation. Aunt was just next to a bowl in her hands and asked Sinai how she was talking to her older brother. Father, turning to the woman, exclaimed that from the very beginning it was clear that he was hopeless. And was he wrong? Jongfong asked them not to worry and thanked them for his care. He promised now to leave them and no longer bother with his presence. The boy turned around to leave, but his mother grabbed him by the hand and exclaimed that she could not let him go. Father said that he was an adult and asked what she was afraid of. The sister fully supported her father. The main character explained that it is better to live alone than to observe their clowning every day. Before he had time to finish this phrase, as his father hit the table with his hand and said that he had already become impudent, he pointed his finger at the door and began to drive his son out of his house. This was already the limit in the life of a guy. Jongfong turned to the aunt and asked her not to worry, promising that everything would be fine. Aunt tried to calm the guy and said that he would go away soon. But the main character approached the door that he would not return anymore. When he went out into the street, he sat down on the bench and thought that freedom had finally arrived. Only he will have to spend the night in the park. On the next bench lay a poor man who asked not to touch his blanket, pulling him over himself. Jongfong looked at him, after which he breathed heavily, began to rise from the shop. He heard someone's cry for help. Someone said that he was robbed and tried to escape. In the park near the bench, there was a girl who was surrounded by two guys. She told them that she had no money and asked to let her go. Then one of them asked her to undress immediately. The second noticed that her figure is the very juice. The girl was very scared and turned around when she heard her steps behind her. The protagonist recognized in this girl the school beauty Shaokin, which was very surprised. Before he could approach, as one of the guys asked him not to poke his nose into other people's affairs and rather put him from here, Jongfong pretended that he did not hear anything, approaching another step to his enemy. The second guy began to approach him to strike and exclaimed that they had warned him. Before he had time to put his hand on him, as the main character, with one dexterous movement, twisted him a reception and throwing him to the ground. His comrade grabbed the knife and began to approach from the other side. Since he was tired of living, he will deal with him in a completely different way. With one hand, the boy held the guy, and the second hit the attacker on him with a knife. He hit him with all his might in the face, and he rolled over, falling to the ground with his back. Jongfong continued to hold his comrade, pressing him to the tree. The enemy's knife was already lying on the floor next to him. Shaokin was very surprised to observe what was happening. She did not expect this guy so strong. The guy went to two villains who were lying on the ground and asked them to like and repeat him again. Jongfong asked the girl how she feels, to which she replied that everything was in order and thanked the boy. The main character asked the girl how she knows. Shaokin replied that she saw him at school, but did not think that he was so brave. The boy liked the compliment of the first beauty, and he broke out in a wide smile. Shaokin asked Jongfong what he was doing in the park at such a later time. The main character replied that it turned out that he had nowhere to live. The girl immediately smiled back and asked him to move to her. Shaokin led the boy to her house and said when they approached the large building that they had already come. When they began to come in, the girl asked how her house was and asked him to be comfortable. Jongfong was surprised at how to live in such a large house alone. The girl called him to the second floor of the residence to show him as there. She held out his hand, leading her. The girl grabbed his hand and led him to the second floor. He followed her. She led him to the door and explained that his room would be here. Jongfong noticed that his room would be right through the wall from him, and it is very close. Shaokin, frightened, asked the guy like him. The main character, smiling, replied that he really likes and immediately thanked the girl. She explained that the kitchen is on the ground floor, and if he wants to eat, then I can find food in the refrigerator. After that, Shaokin told the main character that she was going to go to the shower. Jongfong decided that there was no need to think about it because she was so good for him. He decided to better cook dinner. The boy went into the kitchen and began to wield a knife and prepare a delicious dinner. He was already finishing like a girl began to approach him and say that it smells very tasty. Jongfong turned around and looking at her a little blushed. He said that he was preparing dinner. Shaokin was dressed in a light white dressing gown and smiled at the boy. Going down to the kitchen, the main character froze without saying a word, and she approached him with a waving hand before her eyes. He immediately apologized and explained this by the fact that her beauty deprived him of the speechlessness. The girl who turned away from him laughed and exclaimed that he was very sweet. She asked, "Really, he prepared it himself?" The boy answered, a little blushing and smiling, that he had prepared and asked her to try this dish. Chan Shaoqin said that it is very tasty and she wants more additives. Jongfong asked her not to rush since no one would take it away. For hundreds of years of his life, he managed to make out the best practice that helps in the fight against the strongest immortal. Of course, if such a battle takes place, the energy of the earth simply cannot withstand. Then the best option would be the foresight of 9 heavens. Jongfong continued to meditate, filled with energy. His eyes lit up with a golden light, and he realized that he had left the night in order to curb such strong energy. He does not know when she reaches the sky, but from that moment the beginning will be already supposed to. When the protagonist looked at the window, the sun was already rising and he decided that it was time for him to practice. Jongfong went out into the courtyard and began to do exercises in a green meadow. A huge beast with an open, fanged mouth appeared from his hand. A strong explosion occurred, and the earth scattered in different directions into small pieces. The boy thought that this was too complicated a spell and he still did not have enough strength. Although for temporary stay on earth is enough. He saw in front of him in the place where some green crystal occurred. He lifted him and exclaimed that he did not expect to find a magic stone here. With him, he will be able to cultivate much more effective. Jongfong realized that breakfast was soon and needed to find his savior, and he would not refuse to eat. Suddenly, in the pocket of the protagonist, the phone rang, and he could not understand who could call such an early. It was his comrade who asked. He remembers that healthy man and said that that guy was dead. The main character met with his friend who explained that Juba told him this morning. He said that his brother killed Louis Shiguan and advised them to be careful. The boy asked, was this bastard Liang Da Chao? The guy replied that he did not know so many of them, and you won't hide from them anywhere. Jiang Cheng asked his comrade not to worry. If they want to figure it out, then they will deal with him. But he is not a weakness. Chan Zhenser replied that he was his best friend, and he could not just stand and look. He was kicked out of the house and he wants to know where he lives now. The main character was a little embarrassed and explained that he lives on the street, laughing at the same time. For some reason, he did not tell his friend the truth, apparently ashamed that he lives with the girl. He approached the house and noticed a car parked near the gate. Without him, a guy came out who held a bouquet of flowers in his hands, leaning against the car. Chan Shaoqin went out into the street and asked Liang Dachao how much she could repeat to him once that they would not be together. Jongfong watched this because of the gate. The guy asked how she could refuse him. He was completely ready to surrender to her and began to approach with a bouquet of flowers to give it to the girl. She immediately asked him to shut up because his speeches mean nothing to her. She asked him to leave because he has been sticking out here for half a day. She asked to stop calling her by name, and so affectionately because they are not even familiar with him. Chan Shaoqin went to the main character and asked where he was. He did not even say that he was leaving in the morning. The girl hugged his hand, and the boy immediately apologized because he needed to meet a friend, and he did not want to wake her. Lian Dako was very angry and surprised and asked whether they lived together. The boy went to this guy and greeted him. He said his name as introducing himself. Lian Dachao apologized and asked if he was not the very Jongfong. The boy replied that he did not know who the same one, but his name is that. Lian Dachao exclaimed, turning to Chan Shaoqin, that she preferred this poverty to him, and he could not compare with him. The girl got even more angry, and hugging Jiang Feng by her hand, replied that no matter how he was better than him. The guy said that since he was a friend of this girl, then he could come with her to his party today. He will disgrace his uncle, and then he will see how the father finally said her. The guy said, smiling maliciously. Jiang Feng replied that they would come. Then Liang Dachao told them the address of the luxurious grand of the hotel on the 6th floor. He asked them to come at 7 o'clock. He also asked not to be late and dress more. Jongfong answered his hand that the poor man does not concern. He will suit him anyway. Lian Dachao? Then shook his hand, was very surprised, and he became interested from where so much power was in Malta. Chan Shaoqin remained standing near the protagonist, holding his hand, and they said goodbye to Liang Dachao. The girl apologized to the main character as he had to save her again. Chan Shaoqin leaned toward the guy and said that in this case they could do something. He was a little embarrassed and leaning over his face with his hands. She asked if he agreed and began to lean towards him again, smiling affectionately. Jongfong agreed. The girl exclaimed that it was very good. Meanwhile, the car raced faster and arrived at the chic hotel. The main character by the hand with the girl began to leave the car. The boy said, Chan Shaoqin, that she was lovely. Then the girl asked what a handsome man is next to her. She explained that they looked great together, for which the boy thanked her. He promised as soon as he had money to return everything to her. Chan Shaotin asked him not to start and assumed that this was a gift. They headed towards the door and Liang Dachao was already watching them. He called out the girl, noting that she had already come. Chan Shaotin was very serious and replied that she was really here with her boyfriend. Liang Dachao explained that he ordered her favorite cake to serve and he wanted to show her him. But the girl refused and explained to this guy that she came with Jiang Fan and could leave him. Liang Dachao noticed that he was inhabited. It is only a pity that the costume will not hide his dog entity. Jongfong answered this insolent that, unlike some dog hypocrites, is quite cute. Liang Dachao got angry in response and asked him to immediately repeat what he had just said. He called him grabbing the breasts with a miserable Alphonse and asked if he deserves her attention, calling her insolent. Chan Shaochen asked Liang Dachao to stop immediately. He is her friend, and if he still tells something about him, then they will immediately leave. Another girl who called her by name appeared on the horizon. She came closer to this couple and asked what a handsome man was next to her. The main character was very surprised by this statement and looked at this girl with a serious look. She went up to him and greeted him. He explained that his name was Jongfong. He has long wanted to meet her. The girl's name was Chu Xiahua. She asked if the girl Wanzun through him. Jongfong calmly replied that it is. Chu Xiahua laughed maliciously in response. The girls who were visiting considered him a rather interesting guy, and those villains spoke otherwise about him. Liang Dachao asked them to stop chatting and rather start their holiday. He called all the guests to the center. Well, what happened and where the light, what happened? It was such a joke, and the guy thanked everyone who came today. He wanted to show them his treasure and asked to watch. The jewelry was brought to him that was made by their company. This decoration is called the Love of the Heart. This name is of this pendant. It is designed by Phil Bat and combines the most modern design solutions. And the stone in the center was delivered to them directly from Africa. The pendant will be presented at today's auction, and he assures that this is the best gift for the girl. Its price is as many as 3 million. The guests considered him very beautiful. It was just an excellent mineral. Its price will definitely rise to auction to 10. Chan Shaosin, observing this, exclaimed that it was just incredible beauty. Liang Dachao thought that not a single girl could stand before jewelry. Jongfong will never be able to afford such a gift. Chu Xiahua greedily looked at this gem and thought that there was something in this stone. In it, something special, and she felt it. Jongfong asked Chu Xiahua what she was thinking about. To himself, he decided that most likely she felt the power of bluestone. The girl replied that nothing, and she blurted out without thinking. She thought that the mineral looked like that legendary stone that her grandfather once found. Liang Dachao exclaimed that they probably did not expect them to conduct an auction today. Therefore, if someone does not have money with him, then let not worry. This is not the end of their program, and he asks to wait for a further show. The guy promised that he would be fun. The guys supported Liang Dachao could not wait for the banquet to continue. Beauty. Kuyuer began to play Gutschen. They did not expect to hear her game here. The protagonist, listening to the instrument, exclaimed that this melody was simply enchanting. The girl played and bowed to the audience after her performance. Liang Dachao explained to the guests that while they enjoy beautiful music, he wants to present them with his opponent in the game of Gutschen in order to make them, and he will be Zhang Feng, and Juer will act in the role of the judge whether he agrees. Chan Shaochen answered instead of the protagonist that everyone knows that he owns this tool perfectly. Well, how he has enough conscience to challenge Zhang Feng, who has nothing to do with music. The guests realized that he was a friend Cheng Shaoqin. It is not surprising that Liang Dachao was trying to hurt him. They suspect a good performance. One of the guys said that let him play as he sits on the neck of this girl. The poverty had a chance to win money. The boy, without hesitation, agreed and said that in the event of his victory, he would give him a stone love of heart, and kneeling would call him a master. Liang Dachao got angry and exclaimed that he would kill him now and where he got such stupid desires. Does he think that he can defeat him? The protagonist was seriously configured and replied that they would look during the game. Girls looking at Zhang Feng noticed that this guy was very impudent. Liang Dachao was confident in himself and told the main character that he would have to recognize the defeat. The boy approached him and said that since he was the owner of this party, then let him start the first. Liang Dachao said that his great-grandfather had excellent possession of this instrument and he inherited his talent. The guy was sure that he would certainly win his opponent, and ending the melody exclaimed that now his turn. Jongfong replied that he had played not badly and went to play with his head. Liang Dachao told him that if he is not sure, then let him immediately give up so as not to disgrace. Although he is already disgraced in front of everyone, the main character with a smile went to a musical instrument. But at first he said Liang Dachao that he had too much confidence, or in his opinion, beginner musicians in this hall have no chance. Liang Dachao asked him to stop fluttering and already start, if he wins, so he will fulfill his desire. The boy, squeezing his hands, bowed to the audience and prepared to play. He went to the instrument and began to press his fingers on the strings. The beautiful melody spilled under Jongfong's fingers, and the guests enjoying said that it was just great. They were very surprised by such an incredible melody and the sound of a tool. The guests began to clap and say that he played no worse than Yu. They just did not expect this. Liang Dachao got angry because he really played better than him and said that he understood everything. Yu exclaimed that he was playing very beautifully and asks to take her as a student. She did not leave the boy alone and said that she really wanted to study with him. The guests were very surprised that the girl who played all her life on this instrument asks Jiang Feng to take her as a student. She is a magnificent player in Guchjin. This simply cannot be. Around everyone was just shocked by what was happening. Jongfong, closing his eyes, told his master that he again saved him and he hopes to return as soon as possible. The main character approached the girl and apologized that he was still far from perfection and there was no time to teach someone. Juyer asked him to wait a bit and, taking her hands, asked to think well. She explained to the guy that she had something to learn from him and she just needed it. Liang Dachao watched the main character and called him a villain to himself. Jongfong continued to say that he was really very busy and have to wait. He asked her not to hope in vain. Juyer replied that it was okay and he would wait for him to be freed. Liang Dachao went to the main character and said that he did not think that he was the most busy with them. Juyer for him a gift of fate. Jiang Feng laughed in response with the hope that he had not forgotten about their dispute. He just reminded him. Does he see that Juyer has already expressed his opinion? Liang Dachao squeezed his fists again. But the boy did not lag behind him and said that he gave his word and if he did not hold back, then his entire Mayongas would despise him. He expected an answer from the loser of the host of the party and all the guests stared at him. Liang Dachao faded in his eyes and dropped his head down towards the jewel. Chu Shihua asked him not to bend and thought that he was joking. She asked to take the love of the heart and that's it. The main character looked at her and replied that he would probably agree with her. But the owner of the banquet was even more angry and said that he did not need their pity. Liang Dachao always recognizes defeat. In the end, he deserved it. Liang Dachao fell to his knees in front of the main character and began to call him a master as they agreed. Jiang Feng smiled, blushing, and said that it was at all good, and he had the character of a worthy heir. He joked well so that all guests began to laugh without restraining his feelings. Only Chuhua for some reason looked askance at Jiang Feng. She looked at him with contempt and envy that he would get the stone. When the boy took this stone in his hands, he felt that he was completely saturated with magic through. The protagonist approached Chan Shaoqin and, holding out a jewel, explained to her that it was for her. The girl was very surprised and, blushing, asked for really whether it was really for her. The boy scratched his head and replied that, of course, he was not joking, and wants to give her. Chan Shaoqin exclaimed that it was very expensive and thanked him for it. He explained to the girl that he won him specifically for her. He handed her a jewel, looking into the eyes. Chan Shaoqin thanked the protagonist and said that she really likes it, before she had time to finish as he suddenly clung to her mouth and began to kiss everyone. Chu Shihua looked enviously in their direction, raising a glass of wine. After that, she turned around and began to leave. The car rushed along the highway, illuminating the headlights everything around. The main character was driving, and Chan Shaoqin was nearby. The girl thanked him for this day, smiling, looking at the boy. He asked her to stop doing this. It was he who should thank her for bringing him to people. It was a little embarrassed and looked down. Chan Shaoqin called him a charming, friendly man who masterfully owns a musical instrument. Surely he was more interesting in places. To himself, the boy thought that he saw a lot. But this is the first time. They continued to go talking about what happened. Suddenly, two cars blinded him. He closed his eyes with his hand and asked what the matter was actually. The girl also could not understand and asked Jiang Feng, looking at cars, what it was. Jiang Feng replied that they decided to take revenge on him and asked not to be afraid and stay stronger. The boy began to reap for gas that there is urine, and the car rushed forward very quickly on the highway. He began to move away from the cars pursued by him that also quickly chased after. The guys noticed that he began to overtake them and exclaimed that he would slip away now. The guy asked not to let him go, and they began to rush even faster along the highway. The race continued, and the villains almost caught up with the protagonist by clicking on the gas that there was strength. Jongfong tried to make a maneuver, and when he saw that cars continued to chase him and wanted to deceive them, he suddenly began to turn around so that the guys were scared behind. He began to drive after a turn faster and faster to break away from the pursuers. The leader of the gang asked the guys to go faster since they should not lose him. They must catch up with their enemy. Liang Dachao was in a car and began to scream Jongfan that he was calling him for battle. The main character moved his eyebrows to his nose and replied that he would regret it. Cars rushed along the highway very quickly, overtaking each other. The enemy decided that he became a lid and began to press the gas faster to overtake the protagonist. Jongfong again made a sharp U-turn trying to break away from the legs. Cars circled along the highway, as if in competitions overtaking each other. Jongfong called Liang Dachao an idiot. He pressed the gas and making a sharp turn rushed forward. Comrade Liang Dachao asked to go after him because he almost crashed into him. The guy in response asked him to shut up and said he would finish him off. The race continued, and the guys drove along the highway faster and faster, overtaking each other. Suddenly they caught up and were very close. Liang Dachao asked Jongfong to give up to himself because he is in West. The main character decided that this racing car accelerates well and decided to make a maneuver again. The boy asked the girl whether everything is good with her. In response, she looked at him with a frightened look and replied that everything was fine and let him be careful. Jongfong, smiling in response, asked the girl to relax and promised to do everything in the best possible way. The main character continued to press the gas, making certain maneuvers to deal with his enemy. He glanced at the guy who was in another car and was a little alert. The boy decided that it turns out well not to catch up with him now. He was driving much faster, and under the wheels the puffs of smoke soared into the sky. The car began to go much faster to break away far from Liang Dachao. The enemy was very surprised at such a speed, and his comrade also did not expect this. Jongfong told Chan Shaosin that they had accelerated up to 150 kilometers per hour. But the car simply cannot withstand such an incredible speed, and this simply cannot be. The protagonist noticed in the mirror that they would still not be far behind. Apparently, they really need his head. The guy decided to take revenge on him, and Jiang Feng thought about how they would not lose his heads. The boy said that if their hearts stopped, he was not to blame for this and began to go even faster than before. Comrade Liang Dachao exclaimed that he could not escape from them in any way, and he also pressed the gas. Liang Dachao noticed a turn ahead. He asked to lose speed rather, but he did not have time to do this and was already in a bend near the iron handrails. His friend was in earnest after all. He was driving and saw a concrete fence in front of him. He saw him too late and did not have time to turn him without fitting into a turn. The car rolled over the concrete fences and a strong explosion occurred. Chan Shaosin turned around and noticed that there was an accident. The main character asked the girl not to be afraid because they wanted to kill him, and he defended himself. Liang Dachao was very angry, and the desire to take revenge on Jiang Feng settled in his soul and heart. He promised himself to avenge this guy and achieve his death. The main character's car rushed along the highway. They broke away from their enemy in time. Jongfong decided that if Liang Dachao would continue, then anger will soon deprive him of his mind, and there it is not far from death. The boy pressed the gas and began to break away from the car, leaving more from this highway. The guy laughed and thought that if their cars collide, then he would demolish him. The protagonist wondered what to do in this situation. He heard the noise of the car. A strong explosion occurred again, and he tried to slip as soon as possible so as not to roll over. Liang Dachao thought that he would strike at the enemy now, but his glass began to fly to small fragments. The guy tried to hide behind the glass that scattered into pieces, covering himself with his hands. He tried to somehow protect his face so that they would not dug into him and he would not get hurt. The strongest explosion occurred again, and the fire flared up by lighting his car. But he did not manage to protect himself and his comrade, and Liang Dachao rolled over in his car, flying away to the ditch. The main character looked out the window of his car and realized that the matter was very serious. He looked at the girl and said that they would go upstairs. He invited her to look at the night city. She looked at him in surprise since she understood that Liang Dachao rolled over. Their car rushed forward, and they decided to stay in the night city on the bridge. They were upstairs, clinging to the handrails and looking at all the beauty of the city. Jongfong asked Chan Shaosin whether she was thinking he made a mistake. The girl replied that in the issue of life and death, the choice of life could not be a mistake. And Liang Dachao himself brewed this porridge. He would continue to harm people. The boy said that she has her own opinion on any account and she does not look like other girls. Chan Xiaoshan smiled in response, and also said that he did not look like other guys and there are a lot of mysteries in him. The protagonist blushed blushingly, thought about something, and froze. The girl took him by the hands and said that it would be worthless, and someday he would tell her about everything. He replied that he would do this, and they continued to enjoy the night city. The next morning came. Jongfong was playing sports by running out of more than a dozen circles. He decided that he would still run a few circles and will be very good. He was very tired and sat down on a bench to take a break when he suddenly heard some exclamations nearby. He got up from the bench and saw a gray-haired old man in front of him, who was also playing sports. He performed different movements in the form of kung fu. Then the old man sat down in the lotus pose and began to meditate, soothing his breath. Jongfong noticed breathing practice and thought that it was not surprising how he was still so strong at his age. Of course, this is not what compared to the practices of the Immortal Kingdom, but for Earthlings and so very rare. Respiratory practice strengthens health, but still does not bring significant result. The main character, taking his breath, sighed and said that each of his own, and it is time to go to school. The car slowed down near the school building. Chan Xiaochen told Jiang Fan that she was uncomfortable to ask her to drive her. Therefore, now the car keys will be him, the boy asked. Not to do this because she does too much for him. He noticed that she slightly changed the hairstyle, and this is very nice. The guys at the school were very surprised and asked one another why Jiangfeng and Chan Xiaochen came to school together and even arrived in the same car. He also wanted to meet her. His friend called him a freak because he only parted with one and was already climbing to the other. To anyone, he deceives her. Meanwhile, the classmate began to pester the ex-girlfriend Jongfeng, hugging her shoulders. The main character began to go to class and all the guys looked at him with surprise. His opponent hated him to himself and promised to kill him sooner or later. Jongfeng calmly sat down at his desk and thought that exams would begin soon. He did not open textbooks for more than 500 years, and he could not have time to prepare. How he can be afraid of exams because magic can help him, and he was immediately inspired. The boy began to dive into some kind of blue space and was as if in zero gravity. He had a notebook in his hands and the boy decided that it should be. With this magic system, he will remember absolutely everything. His eyes sparkled. The main character decided to open this book and start training. He hoped that he would succeed. A classmate came up to him and laughing asked if everything was in order with his health. But the teacher went into the office and asked that she was ridiculous and called everyone to go to class to the lesson. The teacher began to approach the closet. The main character remembered that not everything is fine with her. Miss Su looked sadly into the closet. She began to explain Jiang Fan that she went to the hospital and she really had heart problems. The doctor said that it was urgent to do the operation and how to be because he promised to cure it. The boy asked not to worry and said that he had brought the medicine. The teacher sat on a chair and the protagonist began to hand her a bottle of treatment. He explained that it was prepared specifically for her, and after 3 days everything should go through. For reliability, you must again go to the hospital. Miss Su asked if it would definitely work. Jiangfeng answered the teacher that he did not need to deceive her, and after 3 days, she would see the result. To himself, he thought that it was so much time for the full action of the medicine. Miss Su picked up the pill that the main character gave her. She looked at her, and hoping that this medicine would help her drank a pill. After taking the medicine inside, it became very hot, and the boy patting her on the back reassured that everything was fine and it's okay. He explained to the teacher that the medicine began to act and bring its benefit. Miss Su exclaimed that she was much better. She immediately thanked the guy. Jongfong thought about what could still be dreamed of, because he, like a doctor, heals people. He explained to the teacher that he could not leave her to the mercy of fate and asked him to rest a little, and he would go. Before he had time to finish as Miss Su asked him to wait a little, Miss Su, with gratitude, wanted to treat his dinner and offered to dine after the lessons. They agreed to meet at the school gate. The boy thought that it was difficult for him to refuse, and now the lessons have already ended and he stood near the entrance to school. The boy thought about the same to say Chen Xiaochen. Before he thought about it as the girl approached him and asked what they were standing and who they were waiting. The protagonist explained that he had business and he would return in the evening. Chan Xiaoshan smiled and said that she would go home and finally go with her girlfriends. They immediately said goodbye and everyone gathered about their own business and fled. His friend approached Jiang Fan and, very tired after lessons, barely took his breath. He saw his comrade and asked whether he was more. The main character answered his friend that he was waiting for one person here. The comrade went up to him and asked for what was the matter. He explained that at school everything is incessantly speak of him and call him Alphonse. Then the boy pushed his friend and asked if he was actually at Alphonse. He replied that this was too long a story and did not explain anything to him. The comrade told him that at least no longer mocked him. He was very surprised that Chung Shaoqin even lent him a car. Then he said that he was already going as classes today. If you push it, he will definitely go to the university. Jongfong smiled in response to his comrade and wished him good luck, squeezing his fist in the form of support. The boy thought that now he could teach him something and help to enter a good university. In a past life, he could not even help himself. Jongfong thought about it until the teacher hit his shoulder. She asked what he thought about, and the main character turned in her direction. Miss Su apologized for the fact that she lingered a little, being ready for dinner. The teacher asked the protagonist for a long time. He waited for her with sweetly smiling. Jongfong, scratching the back of his head, replied that he had not been waiting for a long time and just came up. Miss Su began to peek on the road to catch the car peering into the transport. But the boy said that he was driving today and asked where they would go. The teacher was very surprised to where he got the car and asked if he had rented it. Zhengfeng replied that it could be, so to speak. He asked where they were going. Miss Su replied that in the restaurant of Shanxia. The main character exclaimed sharply on the brakes, which is very expensive there. There are just crazy prices. The teacher asked not to tell nonsense, and it is better for him to follow the road. The car rushed along the highway, already approaching the most expensive restaurant of the city. The boy thought that he had never been here, looking at the building around. When they went into the room with them, an employee of the restaurant greeted them. Jongfeng thought that he was obviously not glad to see such a simple guy, as he called him a hypocrite in his soul. He was a little embarrassed and looked at the environment. He was a little uncomfortable and he regretted that he had come here. The teacher asked not to pay attention since they came here to eat and everything would be fine. But the main character did not stop walking, sad and a little embarrassed. He thought, but still began to reassure himself that he was not to blame for anything. They already sat down at the table and delicious smells came from different sides. Being satisfied, he smiled. Zhangfeng thought that this, of course, could not be compared with the Heavenly Palace, but still good here. Miss Su was interested in whether he liked it here and exclaimed that she sincerely wants to thank him. They decided to sit down at a certain table that was near the window. The main character broke in a wide smile and thanked the teacher for the invitation. The waiter came up to them and offered them a gorgeous menu, handing him to the visitor. But suddenly a waiter was interrupted by some person asking them to give this place at the window. The girl who was next to the fat man told him that she heard that the most beautiful view of the night city was opening from here. She asked him to see that no one respects him here. They do this. Tsunga immediately approached the waitress and asked, "Really, she does not respect him." The waitress replied that everything was not so busy. But the fat man began to scream that he does not care, and whether they know at least who he is. He began to call the manager and said that they were leaving here. The girl immediately began to apologize to them. She bowed her head in front of the Tessas and said that they were really very sorry. Then the fat man pushed her head with his hand and said that they would answer for this. He promised to show them who he was. The main character and teacher immediately turned towards the villain. Jongfong looked at these unscrupulous people, asked them to calmly calm down as it is too much. The girl who was with a fat man told the main character that she did not think that he was walking in such places. She told Songye that this is her cousin, still not one, but with a girl. The fat man asked Jongfong whether he was showing off in front of his beauty. He added that she was really a beauty. The girl who was with a fat man noticed their teacher. She asked if it was possible to do this or he cannot get rid of her. She offered to help with this. Miss Sud went to the main character and turning to that couple asked to stop spoiling everyone's appetite. Then the girl was very angry and called her a bastard. She raised her hand in order to hit her. The teacher asked what she had just said. The girl went closer to her and hit her hand with her hand that there was strength. Jangfeng immediately grabbed her hand and tried to stop, looking very strictly into her eyes. He asked the girl not to force him to raise his hand on her because he was not used to doing this. After that, the boy released her hand and she began to get angry even more. The girl asked her price to look at him. She called Jiangfeng village and asked to try to figure it out. The teacher told the main character to be careful. The boy asked her not to worry but just trust her. Salgu put his hand in front of the guy in aggression, calling him very greyhound. Jangfeng immediately grabbed him by the thick hand and began to take him. The fat man began to scream, covered with drops of sweat, and could not do anything against his opponent. He did not stop screaming like a girl, and his girlfriend threw a surprised look in his direction. Salgo immediately began to apologize to this couple and promised to leave here immediately. Jangfeng pushed his hand with his hand and he fell to his knees. The girl ran to the guy and asked what happened to him and whether he was in order. The main character squeezed his fists and, strictly looking in his direction, asked to fail immediately from here. After that, they sat down at the table in front of the window, and Jongfong told the girl that she was ashamed that he allowed her to touch her. The teacher smiled and replied that everything was in order. Simply did not need to pay attention. She called him a great fellow. Jingfeng said that she was right, and now he does not give a damn about these little things. He is no longer the frail weakness that was before. Miss Su really noticed that he had changed a lot. The teacher smiled and said that the final exam's on the nose, and they are about to begin. She asked if he had decided where to do after the exams. She asked that he still wants to be a bodyguard. Jongfeng was very surprised at this issue that he had shed wine. He told Miss Su that she was underestimating him. His last works leave much to be desired, but he will cope with the exam, he promised her. The teacher said that she had no doubt in him and asked for no one to call her just G, since Miss is too officially. The main character laughed in response and answered, calling her by name, that he would do so. The situation was very friendly and fun, but suddenly in the room there was a chuhua with a whole crowd of guys. The boy thought that today he saw another familiar in this restaurant. The girl went to the table and in surprise asked what they were doing here. The main character waved her hand and explained that they had dinner, with sweetly smiling. The man who was next to Chu Xiahua greeted the girl's teacher and classmate. The fat man, looking at the protagonist, asked his girlfriend what happened to Jiang Fan. Salgu was also very surprised when he saw that even the granddaughter of Chu Tianxuna greeted him with this hungry. The girl went to the fat man and called the guy with a garbage and rogue, as well as his family. Putting her hand on the shoulder of the fat man, she exclaimed that he was deceiving this girl. But the fat man shouted in pain, after which the girl apologized to him. Sang promised to show his true face to Chu Tianshuyu. Then there will be no wet place from him. While the girl was talking with the teacher and the main character came up to them, this impudent couple, they apologized for anxiety before the gentleman and began to approach Chu Tianxunya. The girl who held onto the foot of the fat man asked not to trust this guy. He breeds rich girls. She asked Mr. Chu not to let him use his daughter. The gentleman was very surprised and asked what she had in mind looking at this couple. Yangfeng took his breath and turned towards a gray-haired man. He bowed to him and began to apologize in advance for what he would do now. He hoped that he would understand him and no man would endure such provocations in his direction. The fat man, when he heard this phrase, was again covered with droplets of sweat. Not in earnestly frightened. He began to scream and step aside, almost laying his pants. He received a good crack from the protagonist. Jongfong asked the fat man to think before he was saying something. He asked if he understands what he had just said about. Salj squeezed his fist and began to threaten the guy. He exclaimed that he would receive from him now, but the fat man did not have time to reach Jongfeng. The palm of the protagonist was again on his cheek. The fat man staggered from such a strong blow, and a bump grew on his cheek. He fell to his knees in front of Jongfan and began to strictly beg not to beat him. He understood everything and will now be silent. The boy explained to Tsenga that his woman would sooner or later destroy him. The fat man began to say that she really came up with all this. The girl asked the fat man not to speak like that, but he called her a stupid woman and, closing her mouth, exclaimed that she was to blame for everything. The girl began to scream in pain and asked her brother to save her, rather throwing her gaze at the protagonist. Jongfeng said that from that moment he was not her brother. She probably forgot how her father kicked him out. Salgu, grabbing her hair, exclaimed that she would dance all the troubles from due to such. The girl replied that she pleaded guilty and asked to let her go. Mr. Chu asked Chu Xiahua what happened and why they were, to which the girl replied that they wanted to humiliate Jongfeng in front of him. Chu Xiahua explained to her uncle that he was completely not like that, and he even knows how to masterfully play guzheng. Mr. Chu realized that this is that kind of musician, and then there is nothing surprising in this. He shook his hand to the guy and said that they were created for each other. Chuhua said a lot about him, and he is incredibly smart for his years. The main character asked Mr. Chu not to exaggerate, looking at him with a smile. Mr. Chu hugged Jongfeng by his shoulders and said that he would like to go with him to the presentation of ancient Gutsini. The boy said that he was afraid he did not understand anything in this tool, but the girl told him that her grandfather loves talented people. Therefore, she does not need to refuse. He invites him with Miss Su, and she promises that she will be fun. Then the boy went to the teacher and asked if they would go together. Miss Su immediately smiled in response and agreed that it was very interesting to listen to his game. The teacher called him a funny laugh and they continued to rest. Meanwhile, two men and a girl were sitting at the table. One of them was with a long gray beard and wisdom was red on his face. Mr. Chu greeted his comrade Mr. Liu and exclaimed that he was very glad to meet. The man greeted his hand and said that he had just arrived to offer him to walk along the Meilun in the morning, just get to know each other better, and asked if he agreed. He introduced him a wise monk from the mountains of Lunhujiang. Mr. Liu explained that he would accompany them. Chu, immediately smiling, exclaimed that he was very glad to meet. The monk from the mountains, in response, shoved his eyes unemotionally and waved his head slightly. Jongfong called him a descendant of the heavenly mentor Zhang. It is clear why he lifts his nose so much, although he even comprehended me by his years. Tom. He looked at the girl who was sitting next to them, thinking about something another guest, Lewad. She is also very interested in his proposal. The man asked Mr. Liu, did he really want him to compete with this girl? Then Mr. Liu asked him not to be angry because they are not trading here. He could not refuse a potential buyer. At the end, everyone will offer their own price. Mr. Chu asked him to calm down and decided not to waste time. He asked to show what they have. The man sweated a little. Hearing this phrase, Mr. Chu asked him not to worry about his friends. He explained that next to him was his granddaughter Chu Xiahua, her teacher Miss Su, and friend Jongfong. The man explained to Mr. Liu that he was playing very well on the musical instrument of Gutschen. The man began to take out the instrument from the cover and exclaimed that in this case he was calm. This tool shone with a bright golden light, and he asked the guests to admire. Mr. Chu, looking at him, exclaimed that this was just an incredible rarity. The protagonist thought to himself that a pretty good antique's in front of him. Mr. Liu smiled and looked with a pleased look at the treasure that he brought. The tool sparkled onto the whole room, delighting others with his appearance and brilliance. His strings shone, and Mr. Chu exclaimed that they came here for nothing, and this is just an amazing thing. His granddaughter also said that this tool is very beautiful. The teacher exclaimed that she was very ancient and dear. The man leaning over the instrument felt his magical power and thought that he needed him. Mr. Liu said that they would not walk around the bu, and in front of them is a rare thing. He was sure of this instrument and pleased began to expect what would happen next. Mr. Chu said that he did not expect to see such beauty at all. The girl who was nearby rose abruptly from her seat, looking at the instrument. She exclaimed that she feels his energy, and he is much better than that tool from Lin Shi. But it should be very difficult to get it. Jongfong thought that he would look at the faces of people if he could play on him. Mr. Chu cast a look at the surrounding people and turned to the Lord. Then Mr. Chu asked him to call the price more likely since his wallet was ready. The man replied that they had not yet seen the main beauty of this instrument, and it was just real magic. The guys stared at Mr. Chu in anticipation of what he could still offer. Mr. Liu said that a huge force was sharpened inside this ancient instrument. The boy decided that he had exactly crossed his fingers behind his back and thought about it. Mr. Chu said that he certainly heard him, but did not understand what he had in mind. The man replied that the main thing is what he heard. Do not talk much about the supernatural power of Jewel. If it were not for the sage Jiang, no one would appreciate this treasure. Mr. Chu replied that they did not know the true power of this wonderful instrument. Personally, he just wants to get it. But if he simply fills the price, then the deal may not take place. The man said that Mr. Chu is right. Isn't he going to buy? He will probably give in to the price of the girl Lewad. Mr. Chu was in earnest and called it to himself an outrageous robbery. Then the monk finally rose and said that he would tell everyone about supernatural power. Supernatural power. The best product of nature, and an ordinary person cannot achieve it in any way. This is only possible for people with unusual outstanding abilities. In the mountains of Lunhu, you can find an excerpt of an ancient book that will help comprehend the scattering technique. Those who are practiced in the improvement of techniques are called warriors. Jongfong decided that he was telling the truth, improving in military art their limit. Such masters will not be able to enter the new level in the future. Mr. Chu added that this tool is not only a rarity, but also a vessel of the divine spirit. The minimum price is 100 million. He asked if they agree, but Mr. Chu was immediately indignant and asked them to wait. He would like to know why he does not want to leave such a precious thing for himself. Then Mr. Li immediately hesitated and thought what to answer this question. Jongfong also did not understand why. He thought that there was definitely some kind of catch. Suddenly, a tool that shone with a golden color seemed to smoke. The main character understood what was the matter. Let the crack and small, but a lot of energy has already leaked through it. 2 weeks later, the whole supernatural force will dissipate. It is not surprising why he is trying to sell the tool so quickly. Chu Shihua went to the main character and asked what he noticed. The boy asked not to worry since they would not let her father make a mistake. Mr. Liu began to explain that he knew the value of this thing and he really needs money. In addition, he does not want to go against the will of nature. Why does he need longevity when he is quite enough for his life? He continued to persuade this man, and the old man thought about the answer. He went to the girl who was next to them and wanted to hear her opinion from her lips. He noticed that she was silent all the time. Then the girl looked down and said that she had nothing to say and she asked them to start. Mr. Chu exclaimed that in this case they would start, and the initial price is already declared 100 million. The guys were shocked and opened their mouths blushing in surprise when they heard such an incredibly huge amount. Mr. Chu leaned over to the man and said that he did not justify his reputation. Whoever gives such a lot of money for a musical instrument, and this is all wrong. The man asked him not to pay attention to these little things since he knows about his status. In addition, Lewad also likes the presented tool. The girl supported Mr. Liu and said that she really likes him. Even with a price of 100 million, she will not refuse him. Mr. Chu, holding his head, thought that obviously this girl wants to bargain with him. Although it all looks like some kind of speculation. Suddenly, the main character raised his hand up and exclaimed, "Then the tool was really good," after which he asked for a decision to play on it. Mr. Liu began to be indignant and say that the instrument is very expensive and suddenly this guy would spoil it. But then Chuhua stood up and said that they would like to check the quality of his sound. She confirms the fact that Jiangfeng master of the game of Guchjun and he cannot break him. Mr. Cho also asked him not to worry. If something happens to the instrument, he will answer for this whether Mr. Liu agrees. To himself, the man thought that his granddaughter would not support him just. And there was something in it. Mr. Liu went to the mentor and asked what he was thinking about it. The monk agreed to let him try to play. The main character held out his hand towards the instrument and asked to start from their permission. He picked up the instrument and touched the string. He seemed to study his fingers. Jongfong felt that some secret was hidden here. If he had not volunteered to play big problems, the boy began to stroke the strings. Looking at the monk and Mr. Liu, who stood nearby in anticipation, the main character felt supernatural power from this tool. This is very good, and soon it will reach the very essence. It is only necessary to use the technique of immortal seizure of the stratosphere. It is necessary to improve it and go back. There is hope again to return to the kingdom of immortal. The monk was very surprised and called Jiangfeng very brave. He is so brave that he decided to use the whole strength of the tool. Mr. Liu grabbed his head with his hands and was very afraid of this because something could really happen to the instrument at that moment. The boy smiled and said that he seemed to not resist. A monk approached him. He called him a master of military art and asked what the rank he had. He asked to immediately answer the question. But the boy, smiling, answered the old man that he was just an ordinary guy. The girl went to her father and asked to say something in his defense rather. Jiangfeng asked the monk to pull him by the screenshot how much he wanted. But at first he wants to ask him one question. The main character looked at them strictly and asked why they hide the damage to this tool. Mr. Chu and his daughter were very surprised and the man asked what he was talking about. The guy began to explain that the heavenly instrument defiled a crack. Now his power is quickly dissipated and soon it will completely disappear. He looked at the instrument, extended his hand to him and exclaimed that soon the once expensive thing would be an ordinary cheap tool. He wanted to hurt this instrument and Mr. Chu threw a surprised look at him. The man exclaimed that he helped him a lot. He will make them tell the whole truth. But Mr. Chu called him a fraudster and said that it was he who stole the entire supernatural power of the instrument. Now let him come up with excuses. The monk also began to scream that he did not notice any damage and where this guy came from here. Does he think that he can know something better than he is a monk from the mountain Lunhu? Jongfong laughed in response and said that of course they did not admit. Initially, the instrument was a heavenly vessel for a supernatural force. But the emergence of a crack led to its loss, and he is definitely not mistaken in this. The monk was just shocked and covered with drops of sweat asked where he knew all this. Mr. Chu was very angry with them and exclaimed that they both wanted to deceive him. Then the monk called him a villain and said, angrily looked at him that it was all nonsense. The monk began to use his superpowers against the protagonist. Mr. Chu and Mr. Liu were very frightened and their faces were covered with droplets of sweat. But Jongfong remained calm, and one deft movement of his hand plunged the monk to the floor. Mr. Chu was shocked by the fact that the protagonist plunged the monk to the ground with one blow. He went to the guy and asked if he was really versed in martial arts. The man thought that if not for his courage, he would have lost a lot of money. Mr. Chu went to his mentor and asked an order or everything with him. If he wants, he can try again. The monk Zhang said that the younger generation overestimates his strength, but he recognizes his defeat. Mr. Liu asked the sage what he has in mind. Jongfong exclaimed that since they recognize their defeat, they can leave. Mr. Liu, in confusion, extended his hand to the sage Zhang and asked what to do without him. The sage seriously replied that he had nothing more to help him and immediately froze. The girl thought that the mentor had gone and the magical power disappears. Then you can redeem the tool cheaper. She turned to the Lord and asked whether it was worth calling a new price. Mr. Chu thought that he came here precisely for an extraordinary treasure, and he is not going to fight for the dummy. But the main character approached him and asked not to retreat. He promised to restore his live power. Mr. Chu realized that this guy was not so simple, and we need to listen to him. Then the man went to Mr. Liu and asked him to change the price, otherwise they would leave. Mr. Liu had no choice, and he declared a new price of 50 million. The man immediately agreed and was ready to pay the amount that he proposed. But the girl began to bargain with him and offered 55 million. Mr. Chu launched the price of 60. They continued to bargain and reached 80 million. The girl with anger in her eyes realized that this old man ruined everything. Mr. Chu raised the price as much as 100 million as was originally proposed. The girl was very angry. She did not expect and said a new price of 110 million. Then, the man did not stop and raised the rate to 150 million. The girl was already very indignant and could not do anything as soon as she surrendered. She decided that she needed to pick up. If she said that she was leaving, then she had to leave and turned back towards the door. Mr. Chu took a musical instrument and laughed that he finally got him. And Mr. Liu was very happy about his wealth swimming in the packs of money. Mr. Chu hugged the protagonist by the shoulders and said that it was very good that he has a friend of Jongfong. From now on, he is his older brother. The daughter answered her father that he was very adult. But the man laughed in response and asked not to pay attention. The boy turned to his brother Chu and said that he knew that he was worried about the restoration issue, but this problem cannot be quickly solved. He asked that this Friday Chu Xiaohua would find him after school and then he would help him. And then the early sunny morning came. Jiang Fing thought that Chen Shaoqin said that the press was discussing the details of the accident Liang de Chao. He hopes that he will no longer have to be distracted by such people. Now he needs to engage in his body and abilities. He needs to prepare for the next blow, and for this you need to become even stronger. The main character again saw the old man on the training ground. He sat in a lotus pose, meditating as usual. The boy decided to approach the old man and talk a little with him and headed in his direction. But unexpectedly behind his back, he heard the appearance of a person and was alert. Behind him was a guy who prepared to strike him and he barely managed to dodge. He asked who he was still so dodging the next series of blows. He did not expect to meet martial arts master. The pumped-up guy stood opposite him to clench his fists. He could not understand where there was so much courage and wanted the guy to find out who he had contacted now. Their fists met, and the fiery flash occurred after this blow. Jongfong began to fall back from incredible power, barely restraining himself on his feet. He could not understand where he came from, and he really had a too powerful blow. Behind the protagonist, a girl appeared who also wanted to hit him and asked not to offend Magnan. From her blow, the guy dodged again as well as from that inflated guy. The girl continued to wave her legs and prepared to deliver a new blow, asking the daredevil to take care. She hit her foot, but the main character dodged, trying to put the defense. He blushed, looking at her figure, and called her a very daring girl, smiling a little. He grabbed the girl by the leg, preventing her blow, and he pushed his leg aside. The main character grabbed the girl in his arms and laughed at us, smiling. She began to get nervous and asked to immediately let her go. Menon began to call the young miss. The big man wanted to help the girl and began to approach her. Suddenly, the old man began to rise from his knees and asked his younger brother to have mercy, because it was just a misunderstanding. Jongfong turned to the old man's voice, asked who he was. The old man explained that this is his granddaughter Van Xiaoxi, and he Wangshan Lin. They did not want to offend anyone. The girl sat on the grass and talked about what was very painful. The boy asked why then this stupid boy attacked him. After all, he certainly did not offend them. Van Shan Lin told Yang Feng that it was a misunderstanding, and his granddaughter was accompanied by training every morning. So Ming In is responsible for his safety. Maybe this is because he saw him nearby earlier, so he thought that he would harm him. The granddaughter began to call her grandfather and exclaimed that he even deliberately dropped her on the grass and he was definitely a bad person. Mainin approached the young miss and said that everything was in order and he was just a cultivator. Then the girl asked that he had just said, but the guy repeated again that he was feeling, and even he had it stronger. the old man said, looking at the protagonist that the age of his younger brother was still small. The future has prepared a lot to him. He really wanted to know the name of the boy. Jongfong told his name, and he would like to ask the elder if he practices the method of mental development. Van Shanlin answered the guy that this should be expected from the cultivator. He really practices the mental development method. This is done in order to slow down the consequences of diseases, but the effect is no longer enough. The old man began to cough very much, and streams of blood spilled from his mouth. Van Shanlin suddenly fell to the ground. The main character approached the old man to find out what was happening to him. The granddaughter explained to her comrade that it was bad, and his grandfather would be unhealthy again. She asked Main in to bring the medicine soon. Jongfong said, approaching the old man, which is too slow and they have no time for this. Van Shaoxi asked the guy what he knew and asked not to complicate the situation to them. Jongfong explained that right now he could only save her grandfather. If she does not believe him, then it may just leave. Main in told Miss that he thinks to listen to what the elder Jongfong would say. In the end, the elder has no shortcomings of abilities. Even if he went for medicine, he would take at least 10 minutes to return. Van Shaoxi told the main character that if he could save her grandfather, she would do whatever he says. The boy asked her not to worry since he would not allow anything to happen to her grandfather. Jongfong thought that this girl is crazy. Although she is impulsive but still pretty for her grandfather, this grandfather is quite a lucky guy. It seems that the method of mental development, which is often practiced by Van Shanlin, has accumulated some ki in it. It is not surprising that he was able to suppress some diseases and injuries. Jongfong said that now he could only make sure that the old man would not die. To completely recover, he needs peeled pills. When the protagonist approached the old man, then he coughing all the time without ceasing, Van Shaoxi ran to his grandfather and exclaimed, hugging him, that he had finally woke up and scared her to death. Grandfather replied that he was in order now. He immediately went to the main character and told his younger brother that he had saved him, thanking him. Jongfong smiled at his grandfather in response and explained that he could completely cure his illness. Wan Zhanlin asked his younger brother to stop joking. He knows very well that he does not have much time left. Then the boy replied that he was not joking, but for this, he needs his cooperation to collect some medical ingredients. After that, he will create a medicine for him and guarantees that it will work. The old man immediately called Main in and asked him to take a pen and paper so that the senior Jongfong would write the ingredients. The guy immediately ran behind a pen and paper and handed them to the main character. Jongfong asked not to be so hospitable differently. He would feel awkward. He is still younger than him. Grandfather understood the guy and decided not to confuse him. Jongfong said that this is all that he needed with the list. The boy asked the granddaughter to take his grandfather to the house, and he would leave for now. After they collect all the ingredients, he asked to call the number indicated on this piece of paper. Main Inli smiled back to the main character and said that he was the one who really needs to be respected. The girl looked at the guy and asked me even more than his teachers. Main In replied that he could not say that. He did not even use all his strength when he fought with him, but he was still defeated. Only if he fights with the teacher can they find out which of them is the best. Meanwhile, the lessons have already ended and the main character stood next to his comrade opposite the building. A friend told the main character that he recently wanted to go in for sports and explained that the most popular gym in the area was here. They say that there are a lot of things, but there are even more beautiful girls. Jongfong asked how he had not noticed this side of his before. The comrade exclaimed that this is wonderful and not surprising that so many people love to go to the gym. Now he really fell in love with the gym and what he looks at or seeks his death. Before Jongfong and his comrades was a healthy tall guy who approached them. A friend of the main character asked, looking at him, that it was not so, and did they really offend him with something? Then the big man asked his comrade how he dares to look at his woman. He is a member of the martial arts school of Qinshenjun, and he is now the end. The guy thought about the school of martial arts and decided that it was not surprising that he looked so cool. When the big man lifted him behind the shibara, he began to cough and asked his brother to calm down as he admits. But the big man exclaimed that now when he knows that he was right, there is nothing more to say, and today it is unlikely that anyone would leave here. Before he hit his comrade, the protagonist, as Jongfong already approached him and grabbed his hand with a sharp movement. He said that he was going too far. The comrade went to the guy and asked to forget about this because soon the entrance exams in college and they cannot afford to make mistakes. If he cannot pass entrance exams due to a fight, he will regret it for the rest of his life. The girl approached the big man and asked her brother Ba to leave them. because they were only two high school students and they had already decided to swim together. Ba asked Wen to relax. Even early and you don't need to hurry. It will definitely make it a company and then they will be able to swim in the water. The girl called Brother Ba bad. The main character threw a despicable look at them and said that if they want to flirt, then let them go to another place. Brother Ba exclaimed that this time he seriously angered him, and the consequences for him would be very deplorable. Jongfong only smiled in response and said that it was better for him not to restrain himself otherwise. In the end, he would suffer a serious defeat. He angered the insolent even more, and he squeezed his fist closer to his physiognomy. The main character deftly dodged this blow since he was lightning fast like a lightning. Jingfeng decided to outwit him, and with one movement of his leg, hit him on the body with all his might. Brother Ba began to fall to his knees as his legs gave way. He could not understand what was happening because he was not able to strain his strength. Jongfong laughed and asked if this was what a person from the martial arts school of Xinshenjun is capable of. He is just an arrogant person with a large mouth. The guy began to be angry again and told the kid that he had not yet finished with him, deciding to carry out another blow against him. But he did not succeed again, and he began to scream in pain in his hand. He could not understand what was happening, but he has always been a very strong master of martial arts, the main character exclaimed sarcastically. Smiling that now his turn, the boy jumped in the air and began to make salto approaching his enemy. He rolled over in the air several times and his leg was on the head of this big man. After that, Jongfong again hit his knee joint with his foot and his enemy shook his legs. He began to fall to his knees and the protagonist was above him. He asked what happened to him yet, because the new year was not coming and he did not have a red envelope to give him. Ba could not understand when this guy became so strong. It is not surprising that Jongfong was not afraid. After it all ends, he must interrogate him properly. The big man sitting on his knees asked Wen with throwing his gaze in her direction to help him stand up. The girl extended her hand to him and asked who will now help him if he is so strong that he could not defeat even a high school student. She decided to part with him because the following would not bring her happiness in the future, and immediately said goodbye, hoping that she would never see him again. The guy began to cry tears and ask her not to leave. The main character said, looking at his friend, that they should also leave. The comrade was very surprised and asked Jongfong when he became so strong. Is he really pretending all this time? And today, he cut down that big man with one blow. He asked he could not teach him at least one or two movements. Ba began to observe the main character, and resentment and revenge lurked in his heart. He decided that it would not end so simply for him, and he would definitely take revenge on today's shame. The guy began to call someone, squeezing his teeth with anger. His comrade began to approach the main character again. He said that it was a great happiness when such a beautiful girl accompanies him, and he sincerely envies him. Jingfeng asked his comrade to immediately stop as they were just good friends and let him not carry nonsense. A friend replied that he would no longer say stupidity, but he could not shut his mouth to others. Let him only look around and see that a whole crowd was looking at them. Indeed, many people looked at them. One of the guys poked his finger and exclaimed that he had given the command to surround him and not allow him to escape. The guys immediately surrounded the protagonist from all sides, preventing him from escaping. Jongfong began to evaluate the situation and saw the healthy man who was in the gym yesterday. He recognized him and asked what was the matter. Did he come to take revenge? The big man showed the teacher on the guy and said that he should avenge him. The man went to the guy and asked if he had wounded his student. Jiangfeng replied that it was really he. One of the guys said that he knows this man, and he is the head of the martial arts school of Xinshenjun. They say that it is so influential that even the city leaders treat him with great respect. The teacher exclaimed that for those who dared to injure his students, there are only two outcomes. They can either kneel, recognize their mistakes and pay medical expenses, or get shots from him and lie in the hospital for several months. The protagonist smiled in response and asked him seriously that he was the best in this world. The teacher went to the guy and said before attacking him that he would look at what he was capable of. The main character began to call him to himself and asked what he was waiting for and did not attack him. The teacher replied that now when it came to such a situation, he still dares to speak out of business. He offered to try his blow and began to approach the attack of his opponent. Jongfong was not afraid to rush towards this man from all his feet. He also clenched his fist and their forces met. There was a serious golden flash and rays of bright light scattered around. The teacher was going to apply another blow and squeezed his fist, approaching the main character. Jingfeng deftly dodged the next blow of his opponent. He did it skillfully so that the master in vain waved his fists without falling into it. Then the teacher smiled maliciously in response to see if he could dodge his most effective technique. Jongfong covered himself with both hands, making a block against a powerful strike of the master. The man was very surprised since he did not succeed. Jongfong also decided to attack his enemy, Toda. He flew far back by slowing down his feet so as not to fall. The protagonist noted that this Yu Faishan is not just the head of a regular school of martial arts. He asked the master not from his family whether he practicing national martial arts. Yu Faishan asked for permission to ask who he was. Looking at him, it seems that he is engaged in martial arts. Then the boy looked at the master and asked if he wanted to continue the fight against him. The teacher, viciously squeezing his teeth, exclaimed that of course he wanted, and they should fight further. Jongfong did not expect such a turn of events and asked what he had in mind. Yu Faishan jabbed a finger in his direction and said that he was calling him to the duel, whether he would dare to accept him. The main character held out his hand towards the enemy and replied that he was taking his challenge and let him choose the time and place of the duel. Yu Faishan replied that if he has the courage, then they can meet 3 days later at the martial arts school, but his territory. The teacher turned around, began to leave, and called the healthy man and the rest of the guys. The girl went to the boy and called him a fool. She asked why he accepted his challenge. Jongfong asked her not to worry since he just wants to see what else he has in stock. The car with the teacher and his comrade rushed along the road approaching the destination. Yu Faishan said, referring to his comrade, that now he had a task for him. Meanwhile, the main character sat at the desk about something, thinking about something, and his friend approached him. He explained that Zhu Batze invites the whole class to a banquet on Saturday. He asked if he would go too. Jongfong, smiling, replied that he would definitely go. Why not go to the banquet when he could eat and drink for free? The comrade laughed in response and said that he thought so too. But he is afraid that he will try to aim at him when the time comes, so he needs to be careful. The protagonist, smiling, answered his friend that he was afraid of it, not capable of it. Meanwhile, a guy hugging his ex-girlfriend entered the classroom. He looked sarcastically, smiling at Jongfong. An unexpected telephone rang at the protagonist and he picked up the phone. Inquired, who was it? It was Wan Xiaoxi. She greeted the elder Jiang and explained that they had already gathered all the herbs necessary for the treatment of her grandfather, and she asked him to come and prepare the medicine. The boy answered the girl and called her very fast. They really quickly collected everything necessary for the preparation of the medicine. Van Xiaoxi replied that this case concerns life and her grandfather. Therefore, of course, they cannot allow themselves to waste time. She asked if he could tell her the address where he is. Then he will send someone behind him. Jongfong replied that he was at the Meilun school. Wan Xiaoxi rejoiced that he agreed to cure her grandfather and exclaimed that it was very well, thanking the boy in advance. Jongfong began to leave the class and asked his friend when the teacher came to tell her that he needed a 3-day vacation. A friend asked where he was going. The boy replied that he had several things to do. A wide, beautiful estate of the Wen family has spread before us. The main character has already entered the room. Wan Xiaoxi told her grandfather that the eldest Jongfong had already arrived. Main John also rejoiced and exclaimed that he had finally arrived. Van Shan Lin, seeing the protagonist, said that he was very grateful to the guy for coming today for the sake of such an old man as him. Jongfong replied that there was nothing to thank him for, as he simply does his work. In addition, he had already made him a promise so that he should fulfill it. Ven Xiaoxi called the elder to come here to meet her father, and next to him, her uncle Shui, and they are not strangers. Father greeted the main character and said that he heard that the divine doctor had come here to treat his father, so he hurried to him to look at it. Uncle also greeted and introduced himself to explaining that he was the teacher Main In. His granddaughter brought a cart with herbs and explained that there are all the ingredients. Jangfeng saw white wormwood, Chinese orchid, golden cherry seeds, nephritic corn, and a stone dragon. And this was pretty good. Without wasting time, he will begin to make a healing pill. Jongfong, when the potion was welded, thought about that, holding his head from fatigue, which was finally ready. Although in the world of immortals this healing pill would be considered only low class pill. But in theory, there should be no problems in order to use it to treat all these serious earthly diseases. He held a pill in his hands and thought that there was not much time left, and he still needed to make some preparations for battle, which would take place in 3 days. Jongfong went out to the guys and said, holding out a pill, that she was already ready. Ven Jianlai immediately thanked the guy. They were very surprised, as after using so many herbs in the end, turned out only one pill. Van Jianlai asked, "Really? Such a pill is really able to cure his father's lung cancer?" Jongfong smiled back and said that despite the fact that this pill could look somewhat ugly, but in fact it is very effective. The guy went to his grandfather and asked to simply swallow her. Van Shanlin thanked him for his help by calling his elder brother Jiang. He took a pill in his hands and thought she would help him. To begin with, he decided to just try. The old man began to swallow the pill, drinking it with a glass of water and hoping for help. When he swallowed a pill with him, very strange things began to happen. Van Shanlin began to hark with blood and he was very bad. He did not stop wheezing and coughing. He drooped a little, and the granddaughter immediately ran to his grandfather trying to arouse him. Van Jianlai, hearing the scream of Wan Xiaoxi, also went to his father to find out what happened to him. The man turned to the main character and said that if something happens to his father, he would never forgive him. The guys had already begun to be angry with the guy because they thought that his pill, on the contrary, killed his grandfather. Jongfong began to explain that it was just a medicine that shows its effect and why they are so nervous. Just the blood that accumulated in the lungs for many years has been completely replaced. The granddaughter went to her grandfather and he said his eyes to say that they misunderstood Zhang's older brother. The fact that he said the truth and now he feels much better. Son and uncle, hearing it very much and rejoiced at this, uncle checked the pulse of the old man and said that he was actually cured, and his previous body functions were also rejuvenated and restored in all aspects. Van Jianlai approached the main character and knocked down before him, apologized for offending him, without believing because of his magical pill. The boy laughed in response and answered with a smile on his face that everything was in order while old Van is healthy. Wan Xiaoxi went up to Jongfong and thanked him, calling it truly amazing. With the help of only one pill, he was able to cure cancer that lasted 10 years. Van Jianlai came up and explained that his father's illness was cured and he rarely returns home, so today he will stay at home for dinner. Just to think about the senior Jiang fan. The main character said that he appreciates their good intentions, but he could not stay for dinner since he has one important thing. The boy said goodbye to the guys and headed towards the high, pure waterfall that was in the mountains in the very depths of the forest. He sat in the lotus pose near the waterfall and listening to his noise began to meditate, soothing his breath. Suddenly, something interrupted his meditation and he began to scream as if in pain. Finally, he mastered the first heavenly form of technology of the ceramic body of the 9 heavens. He clenched his fist and exclaimed that while he was still trying to successfully build his foundation, the correct creation of the foundation, the awakening of Qi, cleansing the body, the golden core, the nascent soul, the projection of the soul, the integration of the body, the separation of the soul, and the heavenly ascension. Only after passing these 9 heavens, he will be able to return to the world of the immortals. Jongfong sighed heavily again, after which he relaxed and exclaimed that the creation of the foundation was successfully completed. But suddenly he stopped and he wondered what kind of foundation it was. Inside his abdomen, it seemed to spin some white ball in bright transparent rays. A constant flow of spiritual energy is absorbed into his body. Is it really a type of new foundation? In the end, he is the one who was reborn, so that this may have served as the basis for continuing the transformation. The main character was very pleased as even the heavens helped him. He ended up in the kingdom of reason. This is after a successful achievement of the basis. Whether this awakened the hidden abilities of the technique of Tyrant of 9 heavens, Jongfong realized that now he successfully mastered the first stage of the body of the Tyrant of 9 heavens. And this means that he already has the right hand of Tsilin. He became very interesting, and he decided to see what abilities really are. The main character squeezed his hand, and she lit up with fiery rays, seemed to burn in a fire. Bright fiery rays approached him, and on the basis of him illuminated everything around him while he stood on a stone under the waterfall himself. Now the boy was sure that he would definitely win the fight to the teacher Yu Faishan. And now 3 days have passed. The day came when a serious fight was supposed to occur. Jongfong noticed a grandiose sight in front of him. His comrade asked to look at the reporters. Even they came. The girl noticed that even the sponsors came to them were large local enterprises. The main character thought that it seems Yu Faishan is trying to use this tournament as an opportunity to promote his martial arts school. In the process, he wants him to lose his face. He is so trying to, and connected even a reporter in front of the whole city. Yu Faishan went to Jongfong and said that he had never thought that he would come so early. But apparently he was very well prepared today and would confidently fight him. The boy replied that Mr. Yu looks more confident than he is. Since he made such a big idea of this, it is necessary to start. The man led the protagonist to the rostrum. He greeted the people and called himself Yu Faishan. He wanted to greet everyone in this tournament and would like to thank them for finding the time in his dense schedule to participate in this tournament. he must declare right here. To make this tournament even more exciting, their main sponsors decided to highlight the prize, also known as the Jackpot Prize Fund. Jongfong was delighted with the prize because he did not even think that he could win money today. But in this competition, both parties should sign an agreement on life and death. The girl held paper in her hands with an agreement on which the names of the participants were written. The life and death contract was signed and, according to the rules, the fate of one of the participants, this death and the tournament officially begins, opponents were already standing opposite each other, squeezing their fists in anticipation of the fight. The guys around were on their teachers and asked to defeat this guy. They wanted him to beat him to death. Those who dare to oppose their school of martial arts will wait for a terrible end. Yu Faishan told the main character that he should attack the first because he is older than him, so that people would not say that he does not respect school children like him. Jongfong grunted in response and said that he would think better for the teacher to hit the first. If he is a schoolboy, he will win him in one blow. In the future, he will not have a chance to show his face. Yu Faishan agreed with the boy and called him brave. He decided to make an exception to be a bad guy, so let him accept a warm-up blow from him. The man clenched his fist and with an evil face began to approach his opponent. The main character in response, too, put his hand forward by squeezing his fist and she lit up with a bright fiery light. There was a serious flash and many bright red rays flew towards the teacher. Yu Faishan, taking up his hand, exclaimed that he really guessed and he was studying martial arts, and his strength increased in comparison with the last time. Jongfong laughed back and said that it was fine, that he understands, and is it not wonderful? The teacher squeezed his fist again and exclaimed that he was just an ordinary person who knows martial arts. And now he will show him where the crayfish winter. He promised to show him all his real power and was already preparing to strike. The teacher was approaching an evil expression on his face and began to use the blow of white clouds. The main character was already waiting for him to repel the blow and clenched his fist in order to attack him in response. He beat off the powerful blow to Yu Faishan in time and he was blocked without expecting this. Yongfeng met a strong blow to the core of his enemy, and he began to go far back. Yu Faishan flew a few meters and hit his back, falling on the concrete. The guys began to approach the teacher, but he got angry and asked them to leave all. No one is allowed to move without his permission. Looking at the protagonist, he realized that he really underestimated him, and he himself was to blame. He should not underestimate the enemy. To one blow is not enough to defeat him. Then the boy smiled back and asked if he was really not sure of his victory. Yu Faishan laughed very much in response and asked if he really wanted him to give him. Before he had time to finish how, putting his hands forward, he exclaimed, approaching with the attack that he would not wait for this. The man released a bright blue ray towards his opponent in order to kill him. But the protagonist grimaced a little from this blow due to the fact that he hit his shoulder right and sighed heavily. He held on his shoulder as the enemy wounded him, and it seemed to be masculine. The comrades were scared and asked if he was looking at his movements, but Jongfong, smiling, waved his hand and exclaimed that everything was fine, and such an attack could not harm him. Yu Faishan was still angry that the boy dared to be distracted and even talked with his friends. He released even more blue rays in the direction of his opponent, and a flash occurred around Jongfong. The boy said that if he thinks as if he could compete with him on running, he really came across the wrong person. Opponents made sharp movements against each other, and they were not even visible. The people around them saw only shadows around them, and both of them are really impressive. But they saw Mr. Faishan lying on the concrete. He really lost this battle. The main character approached him close and squeezed his fist that the national family of martial arts lost to him, which means that they all have nothing wonderful in them. Suddenly, the old man grabbed his hand by his hand and asked to stop for his sake. The old man again asked the protagonist to stop since the competition ended, and he still won. But the teacher suddenly began to rise and told his uncle that he was ready to continue the struggle. The old man called him an idiot. If he had not intervened in time to save him, he would be dead. And was he not disgraced enough? Switched from blows, Yu Faishan was really wrong. Jongfong asked the old man whether he was the master of the master. Looking at him, he explained that since he is from the Yu family, he must know that he violates the rules doing this. The old man came up and introduced himself as Fei Tian. He again asked to provide a service and release his nephew today. If he releases his nephew, prize money, namely 100,000, will become him, and how he is this proposal. Jongfong laughed back and said that he did not agree. So many people look and he tells him to just let him go and for whom he takes him. Then the old man exclaimed that he was very courageous. He, Yu Faishan, calls him to battle and asks if he can accept this proposal. The boy realized that the young is not capable of, therefore the old man wants to fight for him, and he accepted his challenge. But how to count his fight against Yu Faishan? Yu Faishan replied that this would be counted as his victory, and his nephew lost, therefore 100,000 prizes will be counted to him. The main character replied that it was too simple, and he did not agree. In the end, is it not the same thing that he asked before? Yu Faishan could not understand this guy and asked what he wanted him to do. Jongfong told the old man that he should provide another bonus in addition to money. As for Yu Faishan, he must admit his defeat, otherwise it will not end. The teacher turned to his uncle and asked not to dare to agree to his conditions. Uncle thought about the guy who would do everything he just said. He will add another 500,000 yuan as a reward, but all this will be him if he defeats him. Yu Faishan went to his nephew and said that he would now stand and recognize his defeat before Jiang Feng. The man rose to his feet and, bowing to the guy, admitted his defeat before everyone said that he lost. Comrades of the protagonist began to clap their hands and shout that he won. Yu Faishan admitted defeat, and their comrade won. The master, in despair and the loss, began to leave the ring, and the main character remained with a business look standing near the old man. The guys began to ask their teacher in order of Li, but the man asked them all to get out of the road and leave him alone. Yu Faishan said, standing opposite Jongfong, that now when his nephew recognized his defeat, they can start. The main character stood opposite the old man, and looking into his eyes replied that he was ready to start at any time. Yu Faishan prepared to attack his enemy and lit up with bright blue rays. The boy carefully watched his movements because he had to calculate his technique and abilities. He squeezed his fiery fist and exclaimed that the old man was very brave, and his inner power even more than that of Yu Faishan. The old man was puzzled when he felt the great power of the protagonist. There was a powerful explosion when the fists of the two opponents were connected in the battle. With one clever blow, Jongfong pushed him away and the old man flew away far back with his back on the asphalt. The concrete broke into many parts from such a strong blow that the old man was very surprised. From his mouth, Yu Faishan began to flow a stream of blood, and he squinted one eye with the second, barely saw his enemy. The main character stood in the stands of being a winner in the second battle against the strongest teachers. His comrades were very surprised and rejoiced at his strength and power. The boy asked a girl with a microphone to declare the battle results right now. The girl raised her hand up and exclaimed that the match was completed and Jongfong was the winner. The main character bowed to everyone and, thanking, asked to bring him his honored 600,000 yuan. Yu Faishan called his nephew and asked to immediately give the money to this guy. The nephew, with his head lowered, agreed with his uncle and followed the suitcase. He brought a large suitcase in which lay a certain amount of money. Jongfong thanked the teacher and asked the guys to always look for him for competitions in the future. He does not mind earn even more money. The teachers looked menacingly and offended in his direction as they were disgraced in front of everyone. Friends surrounded Jongfong and began to praise him because he is now a young magnate, and this is just a great job. The boy exclaimed that they were flattering him. He began to descend from the rostrum with a proud look, passing through a whole crowd of people and reporters. The guy who was there exclaimed that this Yu Faishan was really a discharge, and he gave him so much money and everything was useless. The girl who was next to her brother said that everything was in order. If this time it doesn't work out, the next, and there will always be time to inflict great trouble to Jongfong. The guy hugged the girl and said that sooner or later he would deal with him once for all. The protagonist now had many enemies and at the same time adherers. Suddenly, in his pocket, there was a call of the phone, and he saw that Chu Saitan was calling him. He was very surprised and, answering a call, asked why his classmate decided to call him. When he answered the bell, he was scared, as the Huanpei Gutsen of 9 Heavens disappeared. Before us is a huge luxurious family villa of the Chu family. The blue sky rose above the villa, and the bright sun illuminated it. He was already near the main door and a man with a girl met him. They said that something very strange happened. A man with tears in his eyes explained to the chief hero that his Huanpei Gutsen 9 Heavens suddenly disappeared. The boy asked not to worry, but first to take him to the scene. The guys began to get him into the room and the man asked to follow him. He brought Jongfong into a spacious study. There was an ordinary working atmosphere and situation. Mr. Chu explained to the guy that he deliberately retained 9 Heavens by Huanpei Gutsen here to better protect him. Previously, he got him every day to admire, and today he disappeared without a trace. He could not understand where he went. Jongfong began to look at the scene and asked if there were surveillance chambers here. Mr. Chu, grabbing his head with his hand, replied that he had looked at all the recordings from the cameras today and no one went to him. It was like 9 heavens. The Hansiski cider simply evaporated. The boy asked him to give to see. When he came closer, he grinned. He said that there was nothing unusual here. Then he thought again and said that it was impossible for such a valuable thing to simply evaporate. He began to peer and said that there should be a clue, and asked to turn on the record again, but a little slower. Jongfong began to look at the whole record and at one point asked to quickly stop. When the recording was stopped, he asked to bring closer so that he could peer more closely. The main character noticed a silk thread on the record. There were many of them, and they were extended through the entire room. Jongfong explained to Mr. Chu that he was suspected that someone secretly united with evil spirits, and he advises him to see all the notes from about 3 in the morning. He thinks he will find something on them. Mr. Chu said that thanks to his brother Jiangfeng, he really found suspicious things in several places after the investigation. However, there is no information with the camera's entries about someone to get into the house. The boy replied that the Wanipe goods in 9 heavens, most likely someone stole, and this person should be used some special equipment. Mr. Chu said that only some of them knew about this. The first owner of the citra is Li Xuanmin, but he has already left the city of Meilun, and he is also a businessman. He does not need to steal, so he is definitely not him. So that only Zhang Fan, the Taoist master Zhang, maybe he is angry with Zhang Feng's brother for victory and therefore came to take revenge. The main character thought and told the guys that it seems they forgot another person named Lei Huadai. The girl said that she remembered, and this girl was really interested in the Veil of 9 Heavens. But in the end, she did not have enough money, and she could not pay for the price that her grandfather offered. But in her gaze, it was clear how much she wanted to own the 9 Heavens of Huanpei Citro. Jiang Feng said 2 people, Zhang Fan and Lei Huadai. And you need to find out about them first. Only ghosts could escape in the cells streaming things. So the responsible person is a definitely difficult person. The main character approached the high luxurious building with his friend. His friend said that this party organized by Zhu Batse, really very expensive? He booked this place and again showed how he loves to be in the spotlight. Zhang Feng, looking at this building, exclaimed that he wants to see what medicine he is selling today. When the guys began to approach the main door, they were unexpectedly asked to stop. In front of them was a man who explained that today, a party was being held here and asked if they had an invitation. Comrade of the protagonist replied that Zhu Batse invited them here, and did he not say that they would come a little in advance? The man grabbed him by the t-shirt from behind and exclaimed that they would not pass without an invitation. Jiang Fan did not like that the guard was talking to the guests. It seems to him that he wants to harm. Then he came closer to him and asked that if they should enter. There were already several people and they held the batons in their hands. The male asked them in this case not to blame for rudeness. The guards saw the older young miss that appeared. Van Xiaoxi asked them what was happening here. The guys immediately began to bow to the eldest daughter and greeted her. The girl went to the main character and exclaimed that she was pleased to see him again. She decided to ask what he was doing here. Jongfong replied that this was a great coincidence and he was here to visit the party, but these 2 guards do not let him in. Van Xiaoxi turned to the guys and asked why the elder was not missed. If they do not call her the reason, then she promises to break their dog legs. The guards were not seriously scared, not knowing what to answer. Then the girl got even more angry, and moving her eyebrows to the nose asked them to speak immediately. One of the men bowing their heads down explained that they received money from whom, and they ordered them to do this. Van Xiaoxi asked how he dares, and hit him on his cheek, asked to immediately apologize to the elder. The guards fell in front of the guy on their knees and said that they were wrong and they were very sorry. They were so blind that they did not recognize his Mount Tai. The girl apologized for what happened today before the guy and said that this place belongs to her family. She would definitely teach them a good lesson and asked the guys to go in so as not to miss the party. Zhang Feng replied that then they will first go to the party, and then they will talk when the opportunity appeared. Meanwhile, the man hugging a woman lifted the glass up and thanked everyone who joined them today to say that the food is ready. Therefore, they could start. Jongfong entering the room looked at the rest and asked if they began without them. The guys were very surprised that Jongfong also ended up here, so not everyone came to the party yet. The guy could not understand how they could enter. He explained everything to the guards, but they still let him in. The protagonist thought that he seems to be not able to just eat calmly today. Zhu Batse rose from his chair and said that they would begin. Now, Jiang Feng, senior man of their level, he alone defeated the members of a powerful school of martial arts, and now many military people say that they want to ask him for advice. The boy answered Zhu Batse that he was well informed, and however, as expected from the president of his level, The guy laughed in response and exclaimed that he considers it his duty to treat them to all dinner today. Before he had time to finish how the man broke into the room, he asked anyone not to move. Anyone who does something will be immediately killed in place. Chubacha smiled rather and decided to see if Jongfong would cope with this. A man with an axe on his shoulders greeted everyone and said that his name is Hao Daxun, and he was a boss of this area. He went to the main character and said, hugging him, that he should not be afraid. They just want Jongfong to fight with them in a friendly fight only once. The boy replied that he was not interested. Do they not see that they have lunch here? He asked the baby not to eat or drink now, but to go to the street with them. The man began to threaten a healthy, sharp axe and raised him over the hand of the protagonist. His axe was right on the table, cutting him on fragments, Jongfong exclaimed, swallowing the food that it was a little overpouring. He said that now he would strike him and put a wand for food right in the eye of his lord. The boy stood up abruptly from the table and hit several more villains who surrounded him from different sides. He scattered everyone who had just attacked him, and the guys were lying on the floor, curling up in pain. The man who went into the room with a sharp axe exclaimed that Zhang Feng was a martial art teacher. The main character looked at the man and asked if he knew this. Hao Daxun continued to hold on to his wounded eye and said that it seems to be a little longer than he thought. He asked to go out and try to fight with someone even higher than the level, continuing to moan in pain. A man appeared in front of a man in a hoodie and a long cloak with a hood. Jongfong felt bad energy and realized that this person was dangerous. Now it's time to be serious. Zhu Bacha, when he saw a man in a hood, thought that he had finally came here. He grimaced in a malicious smile and asked the protagonist at least a little to stand against this enemy. Hao Daxun bowed to the master of dark forces and asked to go through and fight this guy. The man in the hood immediately agreed and began to approach the guy with weapons in his hands. Jongfong noticed a very fast attack of what was surprised and was ready for a serious battle. The boy exclaimed that it was very good, and he really caused him a little wound, but he was also fast. The main character began to use foggy steps and the divine dragon. The boy realized that he was trying to disrupt his foggy steps of the divine dragon. The master of dark forces enveloped Jongfeng's leg with a dark veil as like ropes. The guy looked in front of him, then all this is not good. When the man was in front of him, the boy decided that he had no other choice except to take his weapons from him. He flew away far back by breaking his back with his back, and the guys around began to scream that someone was killing someone here. The main character grabbed the chest since the blow was very strong, and grimaced in a displeased grin. Hao Daxun laughed and said that it seems to be all that he could do. But only 2 movements have been made, and he is already in this state. Zhu Bacha asked the protagonist to hurry and take a defeat. Stop building a brave man out of himself. But the boy pushed this insolent with his hand and asked to get out of his path. After that, he began to use his abilities using Cillian's right hand. His hand lit up with a fiery flame. The Dark Knight could not understand where he got such a force. Jongfong could not understand why he asked him the same strength as this guy. Then he put a fist forward and he again lit up with a bright red flame. The Dark Knight asked to wait a bit because his technique is too complicated and it is better to defend himself. The boy asked what happened and asked if they were afraid. He asked if they would ask for mercy now. But the Dark Knight replied that he would not ask for mercy for himself, but wants to make a deal with him. Jongfong became interested and asked what kind of deal they want to conclude and asked him to tell. The Dark Knight explained that this is a deal to preserve his life, and he just must agree to work and they will be able to create a new world together. The boy asked if he was joking. Does he really want to make a deal with him to his life? The master replied that there are many advantages that he would receive from a deal with him. However, if he will cooperate with him, then not only he, but the people standing behind him will never let him go. Jongfong told the Master of Dark Forces that the only thing he is not afraid of this threat because they are spontaneous. They did not even think about how they would leave here. He is not going to leave a potential threat to himself. The Master answered the young man that he was too naive, and if he wants to leave, no one will stop him. The main character asked him to stop immediately, but the Master of Dark Forces turned around and said that they would see later. Jongfong managed to reach out and his dark rays left after him. But the Master of Dark Forces had already evaporated, because of which the main character was very angry. He went to Hao Daxun and asked to say where Mr. He is where. He asked to tell him everything that he knows about him. The man was scared and asked the elder to calm down. He told him, and he already told him everything. His present name is He Chi, a member of the He family. Every month he gives him the fruit of a newborn and he does several things for him. In fact, they really know little about each other. Jongfong thought about this because this guy named He Chi was surrounded by an ominous atmosphere. Perhaps he sold his soul for some powerful ability. He stared at this man. Then he asked if he still wanted to tell him something, and he replied that he understood everything. The man began to explain to the guy that the elder Jubatsa paid them for everything. He paid that they would not let them go, and he wanted them to greatly beat him. The guys began to fall to their knees in front of the guy and said that they did not know, and offended the elder, so they deserve punishment. They asked the elder to forgive them. Then Jongfong asked how they think they should do now. How Dashun gave the team to bring here who ordered them to beat them. Jubatsa was already in their hands and in horror asked what they wanted to do with him. The man squeezing his teeth looked at the guy and gave the order to beat him to loss of consciousness. The guys immediately attacked Jubatsa and began to approach him from different sides. The guy fell to the ground and began to cover himself with his hands. He asked them to forgive him because he was wrong. The guests who were in this room threw oblique glances towards the guy. Suddenly, the girl ran up to him and defending, asked to stop hitting him. The girl turned her gaze towards the protagonist and asked to let him go. Is it really not even a drop of mercy left in it? Jongfong asked what mercy she was talking about. It's really funny. And she still had the courage to tell him about mercy. What irony in this. Jubatsa began to reach out to the guy. He began to lean in front of him and strictly ask him to let him go. He continued to bow to Jongfong, only so that he was not beaten now at all. Jongfong simply watched what was happening. Then he turned to Hao Dashun and asked to leave this guy alone. He immediately obeyed him in front of him. Jubatsa, with tears in his eyes, thanked the protagonist for this. Jongfong turned towards his comrade Chan Zhensa and asked to leave here. The guy fled to the room and approaching the main character asked him to wait a moment. He explained that the fact is that today Zhu Beizi called them, and therefore they came here. He said that he would give everyone 5,000 yuan if they help him to deal with them. Jongfong asked if they really agreed to hear about money. The guy replied that this was not so and it was not true, he simply manipulated them. Therefore, he hopes that he will not accept it to heart. The guys explained that they did not even have this and they want to apologize. They are very ashamed of this and this is really a misunderstanding. Jongfong decided that looking at this situation, everything looks like they were a bunch of spineless kids. The boy explained when they saw only a few months, and after entrance exams to college, their paths will even disperse. Why then they apologize and recognize their mistakes? The main character with his friend went outside and he said goodbye to his friend until next week. Jongfong thought that Heichi almost killed him not so long ago. It seems to him to begin to develop new methods of martial arts. He decided to do this even for his safety so that he could resist other stronger opponents. When he was on the street, he saw Chu Xiahua, who ran along the road, and he was surprised why she was here. The protagonist called out to her by name, and she immediately turned in his direction, smiling. She asked the guy what he was doing here, and said that she had only recently saw Lehuadai and immediately followed her. The girl explained that she just went where she went, the one that they suspect. Finally, he found out where Lehuadai. He became interested in whether it was stolen by ancient kin or not. He agreed and headed towards the building in order to look and clarify this with it. Jongfong asked Chu Xiahua to wait until here, and he goes inside and checked the situation suddenly dangerous there. He asked if something to run without him. The girl replied that she understood him. Supposing and leaving it near the room, he jumped over the fence. The boy was in the yard in the green meadow and began to look at what was in front of him. He noticed a very beautiful, secluded, and rather quiet place. The main character approached the very foot of the building and stopped near the threshold. Noticed that there was someone inside. He could not understand one thing, why there is so quiet. Strange. After all, he definitely saw the shadow of a man a second ago. Suddenly, the light turned off inside. Someone's voice rang out and said that since he was here, let him go. Then the boy, with clever movements of the leg, began to open the door going inside. Lehuad asked Jongfong whether he knew that he was breaking into someone else's house. This is illegal. The boy felt very strong energy. It is completely different from the last meeting. Could she hide her strength all this time? He has a suspicion that she took something that did not belong to her, so he decided to check it. Suddenly, the girl went to the table and picked up a wooden thing. It was a musical instrument. Finally, she opened it and showed him the main character. She asked if he was talking about him. Jongfong poked a finger in her direction and exclaimed that as expected, she stole him. Lehuad replied that the 9 heavens of Huanpei Gutsin initially belonged to her family, and she simply returned that she was rightfully. When the girl took out the instrument, it started playing it, and beautiful music spilled around the room. But the pale blue haze pouring from these strings approached the boy. He said, looking at her, that since she behaves like that, He too would not be polite in her. Lewad in response got angry and asked him to immediately fail from here to release the power of the tools in his direction. Many bright blue rays in the form of sharp swords flew towards Jongfong. He began to use his abilities and put in front of him a Zelensky glowing palm. Bright light was directed towards the girl attacker. Two forces met and twisted as if in a dance of blue rays mixed with golden. The power of the tool was simply incredible. But the main character did not retreat. Lewad asked the guy whether they should fight for him to be satisfied. Then Jongfong proposed concluding a deal. She must pay Mr. Chu for guts in 150 million yuan. If she wants, it can just pay money and everything will be wonderful. Lewad replied that if even she had so much money, then she would still not buy it. He will not be able to force her. Her family is not those people who can be used or blackmailed. The boy asked about her family. The girl explained that she was a descendant of the Le family, who created one of 100 great schools of wisdom, as well as a descendant of Le Xiao. The main character, after listening to her, asked about 100 great schools of wisdom. He thought about whether it could be true that 9 heavens of Huanpei Gutsen really belongs to her family. Le Shu, really a student of the Confucian sage, Lewad exclaimed that everything is true, so today he will not take this tool from him. The protagonist smiled in response and began to offer her what he had just proposed. Otherwise, if she does not, he will come here every day. The girl decided to think and told the guy that she would look at it and think. Jongfong began to approach the door and said goodbye that they would be seen tomorrow at night. Lewad, angry, thought that this guy was too annoying. The main character was already jumping over the fence back to where Chuohua was waiting for him. The girl asked her older brother with interest how it happened and found it, or he. The boy replied that he found. Lewad really was there and Gutsen is right now. Chu Shihua asked why they were standing here and waiting. It is necessary to go inside and pick up 9 skies of the Huanpei Gutsen. Jongfong asked to wait because he fought with her, and her strength is now much stronger and she was quite special. The main character invited her to start returning back, and after he promised to explain everything to her, and here is the residence of the Chu family. The guys were already approaching the building and went inside. They sat down near Mr. Chu for conversation. The man said that in accordance with the fact that the elder said it is really difficult to communicate with her. He really did not expect that Lei Huadai, descendant of the Li family, part of the Confucian family from hundreds of valuable scientists. But he bought 9 heavens by Huanpei Gutsen with his own money. Even if the real owner is Lei Huadai, she should not steal him. Mr. Chu turned to the main character and asked if he could again try to talk to her. Jongfong replied that he would not be able to return him, but if they provoke the other side, he could defend himself. But what will he do? And Chuhua? The old man replied that he was right, and then promised to simply do what the main character offers him. Jongfong asked, "Not to worry, he is here, and he could always find a way out of any situation." The boy was already standing opposite the main entrance to the room near the front door. He could not understand why the gates were open and what was happening here at all. He became interested and he decided to see what show would suit him now. He was already approaching the door by clenching his fists that lit up with a golden fiery color, and he seemed to turn into a dragon. When he was going to go into the room, he saw in front of him a silk thread that he saw in the frame the other day on the video. He tried to be very careful and straightened his Zelensky flaming right hand. He decided to be prepared for any attack, and if she wants to play with him, his strength and power will be presented right there. Jongfong thought and began to listen to all sounds. He thought it was pretty good. The boy asked to stop hiding and going out to him to talk. He put his hand forward, but suddenly he heard the roar, and a monster with huge sharp fangs and long claws began to come out to him. This monster began to rise above the main character to strike at him. He began to use the roaring blow of the tiger, and the boy decided that he needed to dodge the enemy in time. His hand lit up with fiery light, and he tried to defeat the monster from the other side of dodging his blows. A flash occurred, and a fiery lightning fell directly into the body of a terrible blue monster. Jongfong on time stepped aside again, striking the monster with his fiery force. The beast screamed in pain and recoiled a little back, giving him the opportunity to gather. Jongfong said that she really can cause a strong monster with the help of music, and she is really very talented. Lewad continued to sort out the strings of a musical instrument to defeat the protagonist. She controlled the monster who fled towards the guy to tear him to pieces. Jongfong, running away from the next attack of the giant, exclaimed that he was becoming very difficult. He began to look closely at the monster and thought that he would not stop this monster. First, the boy decided to deal with the girl. As she controlled this monster, he began to approach. and she sorted out the strings stronger and more strongly on the instrument. The monster's eyes lit up with a terrible golden light, and he began to approach the boy. Jongfong tried to be more careful and dodge him. He began to use the Tsilinski flaming right hand. The pillar of fire was directed towards the monster, burning it from all sides and preventing him from attacking him. The boy still reached the girl playing on a musical instrument. With one deft movement of his hand, he turned the tool so that she could no longer control this monster. The instrument flew far back, and the monster seemed to disappear. Disappearing. Lewad hugged a musical instrument and asked how his hand could withstand such a transformation and whether he was a member of the dark forces. Jongfong asked, "Really, the transformation of parts of the body means that a person belongs to members of the dark forces. In any case, he is not a member of the dark forces, however. Once he met with a man with the dark forces and also fought with him." For some reason, she was not surprised. Then he asked if she was tired and asked to talk. He explained that Mr. Chu said that if she pays money for this, then 9 heavens of Wanpei Gutsen would return to her. But the girl did not calm down and stood on her own. She exclaimed that she would not pay for anything. The protagonist began to approach her, clenching his fists, and asked in this case not to blame him for impolite. Suddenly, he felt that his legs were fettered transparent threads and looked down. These threads were tied to sharp arrows, and it was back in west. Lewad did not let go of the instrument from her hands and told the main character that he would not leave here today. Suddenly, something changed and they both began to turn back. The girl cast her eyes to the side, looking at what could happen there. A huge tree grew in front of them, and the roots began to walk around the room. The main character asked the girl what was happening here at all, whether it was her business. Lewad answered the guy that she did not do it. "This is the psycho that came here earlier." The tree in the form of roots began to be introduced into the room, and it was very terrible. On these roots, there was a person in a black cloak. He was already next to Jongfong and Lewad. The guy told the girl that they met again and he wants to give her some things. Lewad called Yinyang as a really vile man since the little guy independently found her. Jongfong thought about whether he could be from Yinyang's family. He heard that they used the technique of 5 elements from his youth left by their ancestors. Their strength is much stronger than that of ordinary people, and magic hands they can make trees and plants grow, as well as force them to fulfill orders and become soldiers. Yinyang Yukon said that she stole some of his Yin family, so naturally, he needs to pursue her until he gets what belongs to him. Lewad replied that she had already told him that now it was her, and until she enters the Yin-Yang house, she would not return him. Yin-Yang Johan asked if she was joking and how she could be accepted into their house. It is better to die than give her such an opportunity. The main character asked the guys to stop arguing and giving him a second. He has not yet resolved a question about his business. He asked the girl why she stole someone else's. Why did someone else come to pick up their things except him? Lewad replied that if he helps her defeat, then she would give the master the money for Gutsen and asked how such an option was for him. Then the boy asked if she considers him an idiot. Why does it suddenly believe him? She grabbed a musical instrument tightly and handed Jongfong some green pendant from her neck. The boy immediately grabbed this pendant, holding it in his hands very tightly. He was very surprised when he looked at this thing and thought about it. This is a really valuable product. If you sell it in the market, you can definitely get a round amount. Lewad told the main character that he could give this jade pendant to Mr. Chu. Then the main character squeezed this item in his hand and answered the girl that he would help her. Yin-Yang Johan told the baby that he would better not interfere in this matter, otherwise he will become an enemy of the Yin-Yang family. Jongfong said that he was not concerned about the disputes between hundreds of schools. He is here only to take care of his business, and while he can do his work, he is not interested in everything else. The girl squeezed her instrument in her hands and asked them to stop chatting nonsense, but rather start the battle. Yin-Yang Johan was shrouded in her transparent threads and calmly squeezed 2 hands among themselves. He explained that all things have his own spirit, plants, and trees. He asked to become his soldiers. All the trees that they wanted and want to live, he asked to immediately get into his aid and protection. Cabinets and tables began to rise up. Lewad asked Jongfong to be careful. This is the technique of the spirit of the tree, the technique of 5 elements of the Yin-Yang family, which can control any plants and trees. But the boy reassured her and said that everything was in order. The trees were weak against the fire, and asked to look at him. He held out his hand forward and she lit up with bright fiery lightning. There was a bright flash and the light spilled over all the trees around, amazing them with fire. Yin-Yang Johan was surprised by this transformation of his hand and asked if he was a member of the dark forces. He asked how the heir to the family of the Le could come into a conspiracy with dark forces. And he asked if he was afraid that the forces of various scientists, hundreds of clans, would unite him behind him. Le Huade listened attentively to this guy. The protagonist, smiling, could not understand why it seems to everyone that he applied the forces of darkness. After all, it was not at all like that, and he had completely different abilities. Yinyang Johan, raising his hands in front of him, decided to use his strength. Blue lightning in the form of water twisted around him, and he began to direct them against his opponents. Le Huade exclaimed that it was not good, and he uses the methods of water elements to defeat fire. Yinyang Johan continued to direct the streams of blue water towards the protagonist. The boy realized that the matter was very bad and he could not move. His body was completely chopped by water. He tried to fight her, but he did not succeed, and the water constrained him more and more. Yinyang Johan laughed and asked how it was. Now they know what can happen to them. Jongfong asked Le Huade not to stand still and not to inactive, but to help him. The girl grabbed musical instruments and began to sort through his strings. When the music sounded, the strings in the form of thin threads began to dissect the water, freeing the protagonist. Jongfong thought that his methods are very strange, and it would be better not to come too close to him otherwise. Yinyang Johan calmly stood opposite his opponent, and in his hands now turned out to be golden, colored lightning. The main character did not expect such a turn of events. Golden lightning began to turn into sharp swords. He tried to evaluate the situation and carefully looked horrified to be flying in his direction. Le Huade, too, was frightened by continuing to sort out the strings of a musical instrument. She began to use the imperial murderous wave, directing all the energy of a musical instrument against the guy. The girl invited him to run away while they could still move, and they began to run towards the door, but it wasn't there. Huge roots of trees appeared before them, blocking the road. The main character got angry and exclaimed, looking at the guy, that he had gone too far. Yinyang Johan replied that they could not escape from here, stopping them with trees. He was very calm and the force literally spun in his hands. He asked them to stop fighting him. Jongfong understood one thing. It can use the transformation of 8 tigers and raging fire. The girl looked at the protagonist with surprise and asked what he wanted to do. The boy explained that he wants to use something that is much stronger than his technique of 5 elements. Bright fire lit up in the middle of a room in the form of a raging fire of 8 tigers. Yinyang Johan was very surprised by this technique and asked what it was and who he was at all. Jongfong laughed in response and said that he was very pleased to deal with him. As for the one who he is, he should not worry him at all. The boy concentrated all his strength in his hands. The bright pillar of fire began to rise up and red rays scattered around. A strong explosion occurred and everything around was swallowed by fire. The trees that served the enemy began to break and burn. Yinyang Johan realized that now he is in a trap, and his enemy is really strong. He exclaimed, looking at the guy, that this child is quite strong. He was wondering where and when Le Huade found such an assistant. Before he had time to voice his thought, as he was a girl who was inquiring at him, who asked if she was late. Yinyang Huhan looked at her when she appeared unexpectedly. The guy answered Yuisin that she was late since Le Huade was running away again. Yuisin exclaimed that next time she would kill her with her own hands. Yinyang Yukon said that she could not escape from them because she does not know exactly where Yinyang is located, so they can play with her. Yuisin asked what he was going to do on. The guy asked her not to rush. In addition to all, Le Huade got a very strong boy named Jiang Feng. He suggested that the girl first observe from the outside for a while, and when he was left alone, they will be able to take the first step. Yuisin immediately agreed with him. Meanwhile, the protagonist and Le Huade walked along the road to break away from their opponents in time, running away from them. Le Huade asked whether he would come yet or not. Jongfong replied that he was unlikely to say that he had a headache and he did not think that they could find them. Suddenly, the main character turned to the girl and asked her to tell him about Yin-Yang's house. She thought about it, looking down, and said that this house was built by the predecessors of the Confucius and Yin-Yin families, and the treasures of both schools were preserved in it. The reason for why she wants to join Yin-Yang family is the acquisition of a musical leadership, staged by the wise man Confucius. Jongfong asked if there should be a musical leadership in the hands of her family. Le Huade replied that it was true that her ancestor sage Confucius presented a collection of books on musical leadership. But there was no last part of this musical leadership there. They are the LED family. I could not study the musical leadership completely. Now, when she finally got the key to Yin-Yang's house, she must pick up the musical leadership so that the spirits of the ancestors in the sky hear her game and calm down. Jiang Fing asked why she just would not go and open the Yin house, since she has a key, and what she is still thinking about if everything is so simple. Lewad replied that she wants to go there, but does not know where the Yin house was located. She turned to the boy and said that he should help her find Yin-Yang's house and pick up a musical leadership. Jongfong told her to forget about it, and why would he do it? The girl laughed in response and said that if he did not want to help her, then she would tell Yinjan Johan that he took her key. Jiang Fing got angry and thought that if she does it, that guy would definitely come for him. But even if he has all the power, he could not defeat him. The penny replied that he would have to help her then. But first, he asks to keep the promise that she gave him a little earlier. Le Huade threw him a card and said that the money on this card and the jade pendant should be more than enough. The main character smiled and said that she had to do this a long time ago. Jongfong told Mr. Chu everything that happened to him today by handing him a pendant and a map. The man said that he finally received his money and this was no longer a loss for him. This time, he did a great job. Before us is the house of Mr. Chan Shaoqin. The nighttime has come and the stars flickered in the sky, illuminating everything around. The protagonist sat in a room on the couch in a lotus pose with his eyes closed. The girl heard the sound near the doors and thought that perhaps the housewife came early today. She began to approach the door and slowly open it to see who came. She opened the door and saw a girl in front of her and asked who she was. She thought to herself that she looked like Le Huade, about which Jongfong told her. Le Huade explained that she came to see the protagonist, but she is not sure of whether he is now. The girl replied that Jongfong was busy, so now he will not be able to meet her. Le Huade said that everything was in order and said that she brought him a gift and asks to give him. When she picked up a box, she wondered that there it could be inside. Le Huade thanked the girl and said goodbye to her about her business. She wondered why she suddenly decided to give the main character a gift. When she went home, she began to look at the box. Jiang Fing is being improved right now and he does not like it when someone interferes. But she decided to just open and see what was inside this box. When she opened the box, she saw inside some small doll in the form of an amulet. She began to look at her carefully, thinking about this gift. The girl tried to understand, looking at the amulet, that all this could mean. Meanwhile, the main character continued to meditate and suddenly opened his eyes. He exclaimed that he succeeded. The boy, after finishing the meditation, began to go down the steps down. He noticed that Chan Shaoqin was not in the room and asked where she could be. He looked at the pillow and saw on it a lying doll in the form of a small amulet. The protagonist took this doll in his hands and thoughtfully looked at her, looking at it. Then he found a box and tried to fold the puzzle together. What could have happened until it was... The name Le Huade was written on the box. Then he realized that this gift from her... Jongfong was a little alert because the phone of Chan Shaoqin was turned off. It was obviously something wrong with her. Could it be all because of this thing that led by Le Huade? The boy rushed that there was urine looking for a girl. He hoped that nothing bad would happen to her. The main character squeezed his phone and felt vibration. The voice sounded very familiar, and it seems he heard him somewhere. He was warned that if he wants to save Chen Xiaoqin and others, then he should come to the destroyed building near Langtang Street. He hopes that Jongfong will come there quickly, otherwise, only the corpse will wait for him. The boy exclaimed that if they even touched Chan Shaoqin with a finger, then he would tear them into pieces. Jongfeng struck with all his might on wood with a fist. A crack formed on the tree from its blow. He squeezed the phone very tightly by worrying about the girl. It was night on the street and a thin month was high in the sky. The main character went to the appointed place. On the street there was a crowd of people who were armed. They surrounded the guys, threatening them with cold weapons. The guy asked the young master how he thinks whether he would come here or not. Jubatsa replied that if he does not come, he would be very bad with his girlfriend. Jongfong spied behind them around the corner and thought that these are the two people whom he beat yesterday at the shopping center. He realized that it was all that they started. Then they, in his opinion, said that they belonged to the Blood Wolf gang. Jongfong went to one room and, peering into the door, saw a tied Chen Shaoqin. He was very angry and bright fire flared up in his hands. He was behind the guys and exclaimed that they were really looking for death. Jubatsa replied that he had finally came here, and then he already thought that he would not come. The main character was very angry and asked why they stole her. Who ordered them to angry him? But the guy replied that one who dared to stand in the way of their gang could not stay alive. Jongfong squeezed his fists and asked if they were from this sad gang of scammers. Then the guy began to call him a villain and exclaimed that they would immediately kill him. The main character approached him and said that they could try to kill him. But first let her go. Then the guy smiled maliciously and asked if he was thinking that he was an idiot and why he is so self-confident. The guy gave the team a gang wolves to cut down this villain, calling them brothers. He suggested first cut off his hands. Then the guys took out sharp T-sacks and began to approach the main character. The guy began to assess the situation by looking at the distance between him and the bandits. They were already approaching him, and Jongfong made a reception, releasing bright lightning towards opponents. The guys could not understand what was happening. They looked at the guy in dismay. The main character squeezed his fists and exclaimed, approaching the opponents, that now his turn. He was very angry and began to approach them, being sure that he would now tear them into shreds. He flew up in the air and found himself right in the middle of the premises in the center of this gang. The guys did not let their sharp knives out of their hands, and Jongfong was already approaching the next attack in their direction, holding out his fist. The fist glowed with bright fiery light, and he began to scatter everyone on the floor one after another. They did not expect that he was engaged in martial arts and was so strong. Jongfong quickly coped with a crowd of villains, scattering them on the concrete floor. Then he went to the main thing and asked if he wanted to kill him. The guy immediately began to ask him for forgiveness and said that he was blind and did not recognize the elder in him. Jongfong clenched his fist and exclaimed that he was already too late approaching his opponents. He hit this guy with all his might in the core and streams of blood sprayed from his mouth. Scarlet blood began to flow out of his mouth, and the guys approached the young master to see if everything is fine with him. The main character was behind him and asked if he shouted that he wanted to cut his hands. The guy was in earnest and moved back that he was not him. Jongfong slowly approached him and eventually asked him to get lost from here. The guy went to his young master and asked to leave here the first as soon as possible. The main character helped him leave, and with one blow of his leg threw a sharp knife that flew towards the guys. The sharp knife was near the hand of the guy, who threatened to chop off his hands, and a piece of hand fell to the floor, rolling down the floor. Jongfong told the offlet that if he does not dump from here right now, he would lose his second hand. The guys began to run away very quickly, although they barely moved from the wounds and injuries brought by them. The main character remembered about the girl and began to approach her. She was lying on the floor. The boy leaned toward her and said with sadness that all this was his fault. Meanwhile, the guy who was the main character cut off a piece of hand was already in a huge room. A man shouted at him and asked why he was telling him again. He kneeling in front of him while in tears. The guy explained that someone wounded the young master and he had just sent him to the hospital. The man was very angry and pushing this guy with his hand asked who did it. The main character was sitting on the veranda in the lotus position and looked somewhere into the distance at the flickering stars. Well, I thought that the gang of wolves would definitely not leave so easily from him. Yin-Yang Johan also can create something, and he must learn the technique of 9 fists of the divine elephant as quickly as possible. Jongfong clenched his fist and decided to close his eyes and try to imagine the image of the divine elephant. After that, he opened his eyes, deciding to try and see if he could be the first to attack. The boy jumped in the air and hit that there was strength with a fist by dissecting the whole space. He continued to make these movements, repeating time after time with his eyes closed. The boy was completely sweating, but did not stop so long that the morning has already come. It seems he is already hungry, and he decided to go to the house as soon as possible as he trained all night. 9 fists of the divine elephant is obtained if you first use the forces of the divine elephant, and then the forces are attributed to the fist. He decided to put his fist in front of him that he apparently succeeded. He again began to wave his fists, and a huge divine elephant appeared in front of him. The main character felt a very powerful power in his body, and looked with pride at his fist. Suddenly, Shaokin called him and asked what he was doing so early in the morning on the street. Then she began to scream when she looked at the wall and asked how the wall could collapse in one night. Jongfong apologized to her for this and said that he did not want to wake her. He noticed that the girl was already completely cured. The teacher told the guys that only 60 days were left before the entrance exams. She asked the guys to pay attention to this, with all the severity, and at the same time, she asked her students to try. After all, she is sure that they use these last days for hard studies. Chung Zhenshi, sitting at his desk, asked his comrade if he had noticed that in his class there was not enough. Chubacha was excluded, so of course there will be less for one person in their class. Chan Xiaotun told the main character that he was not talking about it now and asked to see carefully. The boy could not understand what he had in mind and looked aside where his friend showed. He asked if he said about Xiuwan Yun, seeing the girl sitting at a desk. Chan Xiaochen told the main character that he had heard that she voluntarily abandoned the school. Zhang Feng replied that he did not care her decision. The main character exclaimed that they did not have time for gossip and better advised a friend to study. When the lessons ended with Jiang Feng walked along the way with Chan Xiaoqin. Before they could reach the bridge, the boy saw a cold weapon in front of him. They were again stopped by a guy whom he had already cleaned the physiognomy once. Jongfong asked what they want from him. There were a lot of them, and they were all with weapons. The guy replied that they were from the Gang of Wolves. He called him the villain who dared to injure the young master Lu Qinggao. Jongfong thought and answered the bandit that he knew anyone with that name. But a few days ago, he taught the lesson to some discharges like them. Then, one of the guys began to pounce on him with cold weapons and exclaimed that he was eager for death. The main character dodged a sharp knife in time and decided to use his abilities against villains. He exclaimed that apparently the guy did not calculate his strength and directed all his power against him. Suddenly, a thought appeared in his head, and he realized that it was a magical weapon of dark forces. But how could it be with the members of this gang? The main character decided, continuing to fight the opponents, that something was clearly wrong here. His eyes sparkled, and he looked with horror towards one bandit who approached Shaokin. He was with lightning speed nearby when the guy had already brought a weapon over her head. Jongfong, as if lightning rushed to help the girl and was next to her. He very quickly repulsed the cold weapons and asked her not to be afraid, since he was here. He protected her in time from a knife. Suddenly, loud music spread throughout the district. The guys from the gang immediately began to cover their ears and fall to the floor from this powerful sound. It's good that Lewad appeared with her musical instrument. She said that if not for her, then they would have had to be hard. The girl asked if she wanted her to help him. Jongfong replied that he was not needed. Now he will go to the shelter of the Gang of Wolves and find out everything. Lewad asked if he knew where the headquarters of this gang was located. She explained that the weapons that they use are inaccessible to ordinary people. Jongfong thought and decided that it would be good to have another assistant nearby. He exclaimed that it was very good, and she would help him get rid of the wolf gang, and he will help her find Yinyang a house. They agreed, and it was their transaction. Now they will act together. The main character asked the girl why she sent him that doll. Lewad laughed in response and replied that there was nothing like that here. It's just that, in this way, she wanted to tell that if he did not help her find the Yinyang house, then she will continue to pursue him. The boy, throwing a despicable gaze at her, exclaimed that she was studying very quickly. Meanwhile, a month has already appeared in the sky again since the night came. Jongfong did not expect that the headquarters of the Volkov gang would be in the church. These people really know how to choose places. Lewad replied that she was already feeling dark energy. Jongfong asked Shaokin to stay here. If suddenly it becomes dangerous, he asked him to call him and he will come as quickly as possible. The protagonist called Lewad as a shelter to destroy this gang. They began to go into the room, boldly opening the doors and making their way inside. There they were, already waiting for a gang with bats in their hands. There were many of them, and they were all armed. The guys began to shout that they would take revenge for the young master Lu Qinggao right now. They together took up the bats and began to approach their opponents. Jongfong closed his eyes and exclaimed that his time had come to use new equipment. The boy began to use 9 fists of the divine elephant, releasing a huge beast from his body. Jongfong, after justified this technique of the divine elephant, scattered all opponents on the ground. They fell to the same way to smashing stones with their bodies, backs, and heads. The main character asked this villain to stop hiding and rather go out to him. The man heard him and laughed, replied that he was thinking if he gave his people weapons, they could defeat him. But he did not expect that they would not go against him. Jongfong asked the man whether he was their leader. The guy replied that he was really their leader and his name is Lu and Lin. The main character asked him not to tell nonsense and better bow to him. He was seriously angry and his hands lit up with a golden bright light. He directed all his energy and power against this villain. He just managed to put the sword against him and froze in place. A thin haze of blue emanated from his sword, which was completely enveloped in his weapon. He began to approach the main character and asked him to stop immediately. The man called him a baby and said that he could at least let him end an offer, but he will not do this. And he got angry even more, looking at him alarmed look. Jongfong again did not let him finish and began to use the foggy steps of the divine dragon. The main character ran like lightning to his enemy and hit him on the jaw with all his might. Lada Lin got angry and began to insult the guy, but he did not pay attention to his words and continued to operate. The man squeezed his sharp, heavy sword and screamed to approach the guy. He exclaimed, directing his blow against Jongfong, that he was looking for his death. I did not have time to hit him on the head with the point of the sword as the boy began to use a new trick. His fist lit up with fiery light and he used 9 fists of the divine elephant and began to use the first blow. There was a bright flash and their forces met. Fiery rays began to break concrete. Pieces of stone scattered around and everything glowed with fiery light. and the enemy was already lying immobilized on the floor. Lewad was watching the battle between the main character, and this man noticed a very powerful power. This force that the boy used was like the wind. Even the hair scattered in different directions. Jongfong exclaimed that everything was ready. Suddenly, because of the wreckage of stones, a hand appeared. He got into the wild and exclaimed that it seems he really underestimated him. The main character asked how he was able to get up after such a strong blow. Lewad replied that it was like a body cultivation of demonic power. The boy asked what the body means cultivating demonic power. The girl explained that this is a secret technique used by dark forces to realize life between two people. Jongfong asked whether she wanted to say that this Bu and line is now immortal, and the only way to kill him is to find the second person and kill them together. The girl replied that it was, and they must find the second. The man's eyes lit up in red. He exclaimed that they guys would never be able to kill him. Today they will die here and none of them will leave this place alive. He began to approach his opponents faster and faster. Lewad, without thinking twice, grabbed her musical instrument and began to cross her fingers along his strings. The man got even more angry, but the thin threads emanating from the musical instrument did not tie him in any way. Lewad turned to the main character and exclaimed that she could not control him. It is necessary to hurry now. Suddenly, Shaokin appeared in the room. The boy looked in her direction and asked why she came to the rescue. She neutralized this man with one movement of the leg and looked at Jongfong. Jongfong asked Shaokin, how could she be at all? He did not expect that she possessed some abilities and would be able to tie this villain on the floor of this blow with one blow. The girl went to the main character and asked why not looking at him. But the boy asked if it could be that the abduction of Shaokin and today's persecution were her fun. He asked why she did this. Then the girl exclaimed that she just hates him. She explained, looking into his eyes, that it was very difficult for her to meet Jubatsa. She was very angry on the main character and exclaimed that he ruined everything approaching him. Shaokin said, sarcastically smiling, that fortunately, she still met him. She pointed to this man who was surrounded by demonic power and exclaimed that now she also had power. Now it turned out that in this world it is quite simple to become a mistress, and she clenched her fist with a thirst for revenge. Lewad went to her and asked who taught her and her demonic cultivation of two bodies. Shaokin asked why she should tell something like her. She just knows how to play a few annoying tunes on this tool, and that's it. Then the girl called her in response no more than just a nasty little one. Shaokin was even more angry in response to an insult. She began to approach with a blow to the girl and tried to break her musical instrument. Lewad noted that it was very unexpected and it seems to be more serious. She squeezed her musical instrument and ran a hand along the strings. But before she had time to produce this movement as the opponent hit her with his foot, that there was strength. She did not expect such a turn of events and tried to keep the musical instrument as strong in her hands. The girl began to defend herself and decided that she needed to move away from her as soon as possible. Meanwhile, Lin was already approaching them without letting his sharp sword out of his hands. He lifted the cold weapon over Lewad's head and exclaimed that she was caught. The main character suddenly found himself near them and asked how he dared to attack him from behind. The boy asked if she and the girl answered that everything was fine. Shaokin gave the team a man to immediately kill them, and he rushed towards the opponents. A new battle ensued, and they began to wave their arms and feet against each other, trying to neutralize. Jongfong turned to Lewad and asked her to be more careful than before. He asked to stop following and rushed again to the main character with his sharp sword. Lewad grabbed her instrument and began to run her fingers along the strings to help neutralize the enemy. They scattered in different directions from this sound of incredible power. And it was just wonderful. The main character asked the girl to keep them now with this music, and she did not stop playing. Lin squeezed his fists and began to approach Lewad to strike. Jongfong began using 9 fists of the divine elephant, and his hands enveloped the hot flame of fire. The boy made the first blow to expose his fist in the face of the enemy. A strong explosion occurred, and the man flew to the floor, hit his head on the stones. Shaokin fell on the floor on her back and began to beg the protagonist not to kill her. She did not stop asking Jongfong to let her leave here. The main character exclaimed that the attack worked. Lewad replied that it seems they have not yet reached the last state of cultivation of demonic power. Jongfong said that he no longer feels dark energy from them and let someone take care of them, and they need to leave. Lewad explained to the main character when they went outside that the boss of the dark forces was called Sol Lao, but he is very restrained and few have seen him at all. The boy asked if his old soul asked. He turned to the girl and said that this man had a very strange name. Suddenly he heard Shaokin's voice. She called him to the rescue very loudly and her voice was scared. Jongfong realized that the girl was in danger and began to flee in her direction with lightning speed. Shaokin was captured by the Dark Master. He held a knife near her throat. The main character came up and when he saw him was very surprised. The Master of Black Forces stood in front of him and laughed. He exclaimed, looking at the guy that they met again. Jongfong began to scream and ask this villain to let her go. He felt that something was approaching him. The master noticed, looking maliciously at the guy, that he seems to take care of her very much, and he said that he could use it to improve. Lewad told the chief hero that he seemed to indicate from behind to Xiao Van Yun and Lu Danis Linya. The master exclaimed that this girl is right, and these are snacks for them, and they are definitely on the teeth. Jongfong was very angry and grinding his teeth called him a vile villain. He could not come closer since the knife was near the neck of Shaokin. The Black Master was very unexpectedly scared and could not understand that it was in front of him. Jongfong noticed that he hesitated and decided that this was a very good chance. He deftly and quickly found himself near the girl and grabbed her hand while the guy was shrouded in some kind of veil. But he exclaimed that the guy was too underestimating him and became covered with black smoke. He held out his hand towards the enemy and wanted to kill him with the black streams of smoke. The protagonist hugged Shaokin, protecting her with his own body. Then he pushed her aside Lewad so that she was safe and wanted to take a blow. He asked the girl who kept a musical instrument to protect her while he fights this villain. He felt behind himself a dark night as a very bad energy emanated from him. The master exclaimed, approaching the main character, that he could not leave this time. He called the kid a very naive person and approached him to strike. Jongfong swung and hit him with his foot on his face that there was urine, and his body was covered with lightning. When he cast his eyes to the side, he did not understand anything. He began to turn around and did not see where his opponent went. He either appeared or disappeared. The Black Master exclaimed that he would take his life and again called him a naive boy, being behind. Jongfong immediately turned around at him and also called him a naive person. The guy did not expect him to see him. The main character clenched his fist and pounced on the enemy. The master flew far back when the guy hit him with all his might with his fist in the chest. This blow was so powerful that he knocked over the enemy and he began to fall. A strong explosion occurred and a bright flame struck a Black Master. With his back, he broke the stones, and the protagonist was in a delicate golden haze of fire. He stood above his enemy, clenching his fists that glowed with a golden color. The Dark Master lay on the asphalt, broke it with his body into small pieces. He lay immobilized and smashed to smithereens. Jongfong noticed how the Dark Master began to rise from the asphalt. He noticed that this guy seems to become much stronger than he was before. At first, the hero began to attack the Dark Master and he was struck by lightning. The Dark Master exclaimed, looking at his enemy, that he had another dish specially cooked for him. The guy began to use a black bear against the protagonist. He exclaimed that it was time to show his strength. Behind the Dark Master, a huge bear appeared with sharp fangs and healthy claws. Jongfong was covered with droplets of sweat and tried to understand that it was so formidable and terrible in front of him. Lewad, without releasing his musical instrument, said that he could call monsters from another world. The boy asked whether she was talking about another world. The girl explained that the other world is a special world that can only open dark forces. A lot of monsters live in this world. Black Devil Bear is one of them. The Dark Master asked the protagonist to immediately get out of his road, otherwise he would tear him off. A huge evil bear began to approach the guys. The guy began to use Kiran's right hand. Jongfong clenched his fists that again lit up with bright fiery light. The boy was near the bear and hit him with all his might on the body so that the fire began to surround him. The master laughed and exclaimed that the Black Devil Bear had protection power. He said that his attack was completely useless against him. The bear climbed 2 paws and began to roar with his terrible roar, wanting to tear the protagonist into small pieces. Lewad asked the boy to leave the road and said that she would now connect him with threads. Jongfong agreed and left a little because he realized that the girl would try to neutralize him with her music. She began to beat on the strings with her fingers, and swords in the form of rays began to approach the formidable bear. While he was distracted by the protagonist approached him and tried to strike. He ended up under the bear and tried to hit him, that there was strength with his fiery fist. The bear roared even more after the force fist of the divine elephant used by the main character. At first he used the first blow and the bear roared very loudly in pain. Jongfong thought that it all worked. The bear got to his feet again, and the boy realized that this did not work against him at all. Lewad raised her hand up and asked the protagonist to be careful. She saw how the beast was approaching him, and his eyes shine in bright red color. Jongfong clenched his fist that lit up with fire and began to approach the bear using his new abilities. But he noticed that he could not move, and his legs were completely shrouded in a dark haze. They lit up with a black veil and he could not take a single step forward. This is all done by an evil black bear. The monster began to approach the guy. Jongfong began to push him away and exclaimed, addressing his comrades that this time they had problems.